Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a healing quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story LeySmitt from 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘. So let's start the video. Izuku Midoriya looked up at the villain in front of him, scared so bad he couldn't breathe. This wasn't his first time coming face to face with a villain, but it was the first time being pulled up by one and having a knife pressed against his throat as the villain used him as a shield against the hero. The hero who stood at the end of the alley stopped in his tracks upon seeing the boy. His neck was covered in what appeared to be an excessively long scarf with goggles covering his eyes, a racer head. The villain hissed, making Izuku's stomach flip. It does not take a quirk to slit a boy's throat. He pressed harder, and Izuku closed his eyes to hide the tears. This was it, he thought to himself. After all the things he had survived, a small-time villain would be the one to kill him. It was quiet for a minute, and the boy couldn't help but peek one eye open to see the hero in front of him smirking. And then, the entire world exploded with sound. As both the villain and Izuku screamed in pain, the knife fell to the ground. The sound stopped when the villain convulsed on the ground, and the boy watched with wide eyes as Eraserhead's capture weapon surrounded the villain. "I thought you said you had him." Izuku turned as a blonde man appeared, presumably the cause of the unbearable noise. The hero called Eraserhead scoffed. "I did. You interrupted." The boy realized that it was over, but upon realizing that he wasn't in fact going to die, he slowly stepped towards his backpack, trying not to bring attention to himself. He failed miserably, however, when he accidentally kicked a rock against the wall. The two men looked at him, but before they could react, he scooped up his backpack and jumped through the window of the nearest building, smacking his head hard enough to see white when he landed on the concrete. He didn't have time to stop and assess the pain, so he stood up and began running. Navigating the building was easy enough when he heard one of the heroes had followed him in through the window. He assumed that he was following behind him, so when he reached the door, he hardly had time to skid into a stop in front of the dark-haired man. He fell in the process, landing on his butt. "Hello," the hero said awkwardly, scratching his neck. Izuku tried to scramble to his feet but found himself wrapped in the man's scarf. "I didn't mean to scare you," he tries to say gently, "but we need to get you to the hospital and find your parents all right." Finally, the boy began to cry. He didn't struggle, he didn't try to run. He just relaxed against the hard floor and sobbed. His head pounded, his ears were bleeding, and the fear of his parents caught up to him. I'm sorry," he sobbed. "Please don't make me go back. Please just let me go," he begged through his tears. Aizawa's eyes softened as he watched the boy cry. He carefully approached the young boy and keeps his voice low. "Young one," he says, catching the attention of the boy. The green-haired child looks up at him and the hero kneels so they are at eye level. "My name is Eraserhead, but my friends call me Shota. I am a pro hero." The boy's wailing begins to quiet, though the tears still stain his cheeks. Aizawa whispers, "Being a hero means I'm going to help you and keep you safe. I personally will make sure that you will not end up with anyone who will hurt you. Do you believe me?" Izuku sniffles. He did. This man's eyes were kind, and he wanted to. He wanted to trust him. He nodded, wiping his nose on the sleeve of his sweatshirt. The hero gave him a small smile. "Can you tell me your name?" he asks. "My name is Izuku, sir." Outside of the building they can hear a police siren, but Eraserhead calls his attention back to him. "It is very nice to meet you, Izuku." The vehicles arrive and he can hear the first responders run into the alley. "Kiddo, you look very hurt. Can I pick you up and bring you outside so some people can treat your injuries?" The boy nods, and the scarves retract. Aizawa is shocked at the lack of weight he feels when he lifts the boy. He holds him tight to his chest when he feels the small fists grip his costume. The paramedics rush over to them and allow the hero to bring him into the ambulance. He gently explains that he needs to put him down, but when he does, he finds his sleeve in a death grip from the boy. "Please don't leave." "I won't." In the hospital, the boy reveals that his full name is Midoriya Izuku, and he is 10 years old. He had ran away when he was 8, and had been on the streets for 2 years. The boy refused to let go of the hero until a detective came in asking to speak to Eraserhead alone. Aizawa managed to convince the boy that he could hold on to the end of his scarf as the two would be right outside. Present Mike had already explained the situation with the villain, so they went straight to discussing Izuku. "There is no missing persons report for the boy. He may be lying about his name, though I highly doubt that." Tsukachi sighs. "We will keep looking for his family. However, I'm not sure how confident I am releasing Izuku to their custody if they are found. He begged me to not give him to his parents." Aizawa admits he's terrified. The detective nods before continuing. His development has been stunted due to his severe malnourishment. It appears he has suffered many injuries that have not had the ability to heal properly, some as old as 4 years, so we can assume they happened in his parents' custody. So what happens next? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 rubs his neck. Not liking the answer, Izuku will need a lot of help, and I highly doubt we will be able to find a foster family who is willing to take him in. There is always an orphanage, but I fear since we aren't aware if he has a quirk or not, I'll take him. What? I said that I will take him, Aizawa repeats coldly. He can't imagine this child being able to get the help he needs in an orphanage. Hisashi and I make good money. We can afford whatever treatment the boy may need. He already trusts me, and until there is a better option I want to do it. The detective smiles to himself. He had never seen his friend act like this before. All right, I'll see what I can do about getting guardianship papers for you and Hisashi. Send my husband up here when you're done with him, Aizawa says. He imagines what Hisashi would say at his tone. Please, he adds before the detective walks down the hall. Aizawa knocks softly on the door before opening it slightly. Izuku. It's me. The boy is sitting straight up on the bed, hugging his knees to his chest. Can I come in? The boy nods and he approaches the bed. He sits on the corner of it. Thankfully, the boy doesn't hide his face like he did the duration of his testing and checkups. Izuku hesitantly drops the scarf from his hand, but Aizawa makes no move to take it back. The boy was dirty and in dire need of a bath. His hair had literal leaves in it. He couldn't believe he was 10 years old. He seemed so small. So fucking small. Midoriya, don't call me that. The boy snaps. Okay, I won't. Izuku nods stiffly before Shota continues. Izuku, in a few days you are going to come home with me and my husband. The boy's eyes widen. We are going to keep you safe. But to do that, to protect you, we need to know what we're protecting you from. Do you understand? Izuku nods, his eyes filling with tears. The hero lets the boy take as much time as he needs. He wasn't lying when he explained why he needed to know. If they did find his parents, they needed to know what they did to this child. It's only my dad. What's your dad's name? The boy puts his head in between his knees. Hi Hisashi. My mom's name was Inko. God. Aizawa wanted to stop. He wanted to stop and let the boy rest and be warm, but the police needed to know. Izuku. The man whispers, this is the last question, I promise, then we can get you to sleep, okay. His curls bounce on top of his head, but he doesn't show his face again. Why did you run away? He watches as the boy lifts the end of his scarf into his hand. He would lock me in a closet. Aizawa feels his stomach drop. He would hit me in the face. He would stomp on my stomach and my arms. The boy's voice shakes. I wouldn't get food when I was bad, and he wouldn't. He accidentally yanks the scarf, pulling the hero closer. Sometimes he wouldn't give me clothes. The boy whimpers. The man pulls the boy into his chest and felt as he shook against him. He was infuriated and ready to fight a bastard, but right now, comforting the kid was more important. Yamada shakes his husband awake quietly. He had fallen asleep in a chair while keeping an eye on the boy, which was strangely not the weirdest position the hero had fallen asleep in. Every time he wakes his husband up, he glared into his soul trying to kill him with his eyes. But every time without fail, those eyes softened when he recognized his husband. This time was no different. Aizawa quietly unravels his scarf a little bit more to leave the room so the two could talk. The door shutting seems impossibly loud on the completely silent floor. Shota. He knows that tone of voice. What did you do? Aizawa grumbles at the ground. I promised I wouldn't leave him. That's not a promise you can make. Present Mike lectures, maintaining awareness of his volume. The dark-haired man grabs his husband's hands, forcing him to pause. Hisashi. This kid, he's been through hell. He reached up to push a part of his hair back up into the ridiculous style. Just meet him first. He's something special, I know it. He feels a hard tug on the scarf and Yamada raises his eyebrows. Aizawa grabs his hand and enters the room. As soon as the boy recognizes Eraserhead, he stops pulling at the scarf. He watches as the two approach slowly, and when Yamada enters the light, Izuku hesitantly covers his ears. Aizawa smirks, and his husband laughs. Yeah, little listener, that was me. I'm sorry about that. Aizawa can see guilt flash through his eyes. The two pull up chairs next to the bed, and the blonde introduces himself. My name is Yamada Hisashi, but most people know me as Present Mike. I was in that alley with you, the one who made all the noise. I promise I'm not normally that loud. The man beside him scoffs, trying to hide his smile. Yamada turns to him with wide eyes. Really, Shota? You're always loud, baby. But is now the time to say that? They can hear fabric shift and they turn back to the boy on the bed who's grinning widely at the banter between the two. It was the first time he had smiled all night. Aizawa grabs the boy's hand. This is my husband. Izuku had let Aizawa leave the third day in the hospital, as long as Hisashi stayed with him. Still, when the three came home together after 5 days, it felt as if they hadn't been home in forever. It was only 9 in the morning, and it was time for Shota's second cup of coffee, so he walked straight into the kitchen to start a pot. They showed the young boy around the modest apartment. He walks slowly behind the blonde, peeking out from his side every time he says something new. They show him his room and his eyes light up. Heizashi grins. He had done the majority of the work on the guest room. It wasn't much, but it was better than the gray guest room it had been less than a week earlier. The bedding was still gray, but the walls had been painted red and green. There were posters of All Might and Endeavor, due to the lack of time, and noticed they were the easiest to find. Heizashi explains they can go shopping for more things in a few days, which earns him a nudge from his husband. They have a silent conversation with looks while Izuku explores the room. He reaches the wall with the 2 posters on it and asks, "Mr. Aizawa." He yanks the scarf when he points at a poster, grabbing both the men's attention. "Who's that?" "That would be All Might. He's the #1 hero at the moment." Heizashi laughed and rolled his eyes at his husband's explanation. All Might is the symbol of peace. He's the best hero in the world because he saves the most people and gives people hope. Izuku's eyes shine before turning back to them. "What are you guys?" They look at him, confused. "Like, number?" Yamato laughs while Aizawa blushes. "Well, little listener, I'm number 47. But Shota here didn't make the top 100, so he's a little bitter about it." The dark-haired hero rolls his eyes and walks to the door. "More than ready for his coffee, Mr. Aizawa?" He pauses. "Yeah, Izuku." The boy scratches his neck, embarrassed. "You saved me. So I think you're a pretty good hero." Yamato tears up and has to turn away from the boy, facing his bright red husband. "Thank you, kid. That means a lot." After his coffee, Aizawa knows what has to happen next. He walks up to the kid who sits cross-legged on the ground, picking at the rug. He makes a mental note to grab some toys next time he's out. "Hey bud, I think we need to get you in the bath." His face scrunches and he shakes his head. I don't really want to." Aizawa leans down, his back cracking, making him seem 10 times older than he is. "Yeah, I know, I don't like showering either. But you need to. I promise, you'll feel so much better when you're done." "I don't want to." The boy crosses his arms. The hero raises his eyebrows. "Izuku, I'd really like if you would take a bath." "No, please, no." Aizawa sighs. Maybe he needed another cup of coffee. "Can I ask why?" Izuku looks at the ground. "I don't like water." The hero nods and sits across from him, taking his long legs and crossing them. "That's fair. But you need to take a bath. What can we do to make it less scary?" "Nothing." From the doorway of the 2 men's bedroom, Heizashi watches his husband negotiate a bath with the boy. The scene is adorable, though he's not so sure how much his husband can talk about hygiene. It astounded him that the man didn't shower every day. "What if you wore a bathing suit? And Heizashi and I sat with you so you wouldn't be alone?" He doesn't outright say no, but he still shakes his head. "Help me out here, bud." Yamato finally approaches, sensing his husband's growing frustration with the kid's silence. He places his hand in his husband's hair, which causes the man to glare up at him and the boy to giggle. "Izuku, I promise, we will not judge you. We don't care, we promise. We just want you to feel good and healthy and clean." His green eyes go to Aizawa. "I don't know how." Aizawa hesitantly reaches his hand over to pat the green hair. "That's okay. We'll help." They didn't have any swimsuits that would fit the small boy, but thankfully Heizashi had found the time to grab the basic necessities, such as a couple baggy t-shirts, shorts, and underwear. He entered the bathroom with his new pair of shorts, the string tied tightly around his waist to hold them up. Aizawa leads him to the bathtub. "Can you feel the water for me, Izuku, and let me know if it's too cold or too warm?" Izuku's hand gently touches the water and he nods at Aizawa. The hero helps him take a step into the bath. "What about now? Is the water okay?" "Yeah." Heizashi enters the bathroom as Aizawa says. "If at any point it gets too hot or too cold, you need to let us know." "Okay, buddy." Heizashi kneels by the tub when the kid finally submerged his body. He instructs the boy to cover his eyes, and to not take his hands off his eyes until they say so. He fills the plastic cup half full and gently pours it over the boy's head. He almost laughs to himself. The boy's hair is so thick that it's still standing almost completely dry. When it does manage to get wet, his hair hangs to his shoulders, no longer shrinking due to the curls. The boy uncovers his eyes and Heizashi shows him the shampoo. He lets the boy take a sniff and explains what he's going to do. This time, Shota helps cover the boy's eyes as his husband begins to scrub at his hair. It takes a long time. Halfway through, they give the boy a break before returning to the bottom half of his hair. Conditioner goes in much easier with the hair nice and clean. And they notice how he relaxes every time they pour the warm water over his head to rinse the products out. After they finish, and Izuku has on a plain t-shirt and another pair of shorts, he sits on his bed while Aizawa tries to get through the mess of curls. He's almost finished when the boy nods off to sleep in his lap. He runs his fingers through the kid's hair, and his heart melts when he feels Izuku lean into his hand. He lays down, and the boy curls into his chest, both drifting off to sleep together. 6 months later, every day when Aizawa returned from work, he was met with his son jumping onto him. It had taken a while for the boy to let the man leave the apartment with no tears. Yamato grins when he sees the two, which makes Aizawa roll his eyes. Heizashi enters. "Come on, little listener, we're gonna go visit another school." He hands the small backpack to their son. who jumps down from his dad to grab it and race around the apartment to put on his sneakers. Aizawa gives his husband a kiss before running his hands through his hair. His eye bags are darker than usual, and Hisashi hated when he got like this. "My love, I got this today. You stay here and take a nap. I'll make dinner when I get back." The man shakes his head. "I'm alright, Zashi. We can stop for coffee on the way. Zuko will probably want a pink drink anyway." Yamada can't help but worry for his husband. Their schedules had been packed lately. Hisashi would drop their son off at the hero daycare before school, and around noon him or Shota would go check on him during the lunch break. Hisashi would head to the radio station right after work, and he'd be home for dinner for only an hour before he had to go on patrol. He'd get back around midnight, where Shota would leave to go look after the streets, and he wouldn't see him until morning coffee at UA. Izuku breaks his train of thought when he tugs at his sleeve. "I'm ready." He had been cleared to go to school for a little under a month now. The kid was crazy smart, and his psychiatrist said he would have no trouble catching up to his classmates. He still struggled with nightmares and panic attacks, but at the moment they couldn't do much more than bring the boy in for twice-a-week therapy sessions. However, Shota was picky. Don't get Hisashi wrong, he wanted a good school for his son as well, but some of the reasons his husband used were not valid excuses. So now they were at Aldera Junior High, and from Aizawa's face it wasn't looking like the right fit. They took a tour, and when they got to the playground, Izuku stopped. When the adults turned to look at him, he had tears glossing over his eyes as he looked at some of the kids playing. Kaken, the blonde in the group, looked up, shock making him stand in place. "Deku." A green-haired boy drops his bag and begins to run. Aizawa reaches out for him but barely misses the child's hood. "Izuku." Yamada calls out. The two boys tackle each other to the ground laughing, and then crying. Where were you, Deku?" Neither of them move from the hug. Izuku mumbles something into his chest. "It was your dad, wasn't it?" He nods, but before his old friend is able to declare war, the adults are upon them. Bakugo holds his friend protectively. "And who the fuck are you?" he snarls. The teacher smacks the boy upside the head. "Katsuki. These are pro-heroes and this boy's fathers. Let him go at once." Sparks erupt from his hands at the challenge, but they immediately cease when he feels his friend's hand on his own. "It's okay, Kaken. They're really nice to me." He made a sound of discontent but released him from the hug. Aizawa is about to go into a lecture about how he can't just run off, but Yamada speaks first. "My name is Present Mike, and this here is Eraserhead." He gestures to his husband. "Baby, who's your friend?" "I'm Bakugo Katsuki. And those aren't your real names," he grunts. "Izuku and I've been friends since we were 2. We practically grew up together." The two heroes share a glance. Someone who knew their son before he was isolated by his father. "You're right, Bakugo. My name is Yamada Hisashi and my husband is Aizawa Shota." He explains how they need to get going, and gives his phone number to the boy in case he wants to call and check in with Izuku. They hug again, only this time they're able to hear the conversation. "I thought I'd never see you again," their son mumbles. "Please don't disappear again on me." "All right." Izuku meets with who would be his homeroom teacher privately while the two meet with the principal. "Honestly, that was very surprising," the man admits. "Bakugo may be our best student, and has the most potential for going pro one day, but he continues to be one of the worst troublemakers in our school." "What do you mean?" The principal explains how the boy tends to be a disruption in class, using his quirk to gain popularity among his peers. He picks on those with weaker quirks, and picks fights with upperclassmen. By the time they finish up, it's getting dark outside. Izuku bounces all the way to the car, talking excitedly about his new school. Aizawa hesitates with the new information he was given, but he doesn't want to get his son's hopes up. "Well, kiddo, there are some other schools to look at." He pauses in the backseat, looking between the two. "But I want to go here." Yamada sighs. "I know, baby. But me and Shota have some things to discuss." "What do you have to talk about?" "I want to go here." I know, but no, I want to go here." "Look," Shota says, as Hisashi starts the car, "we're not saying no. But we have some things to talk about before we can say yes for sure." Izuku sits in the back and pouts the entire way home. And when they get back to the small apartment, he storms straight to his room and slams the door, no doubt to continue his pouting. Yamada raises his eyebrows at his husband, smirking. Aizawa glares at him. "What? He looks like you when you don't get to pick the movie." "Oh, fuck off." Yamada laughs. The next night at dinner, the two sat Izuku down to talk to him. All he did was glare. The kid couldn't completely ice them out. He had another nightmare last night, so he had ended up in bed with Shota and later on Hisashi. However, the next morning it was like nothing had changed. "Izuku." The boy just turns his head at Aizawa. Huffing, he rolls his eyes and tries again. "Izuku, please look at us when we are trying to speak to you." He doesn't miss their son's nostrils flaring, but nevertheless he turns back to them. "We talked about it, and if you want to go to Aldera, you can start as early as next week." Izuku's eyes widen, and he looks ready to jump across the table at them. "Really?" "Yes," Hisashi starts, "but we need to talk about your attitude as well." The boy shrinks a little bit and Aizawa continues. How you acted last night and today is not how you go about getting what you want. It's okay to be upset with us, but you need to communicate why. You can't ignore us and be mean. I'm sorry, he grumbles, poking at his plate with his fork. It's okay, bud. But please do your best to not let it happen again. We want you to be open with us, even if that means you yell or cry. We want to hear what you have to say, but you can't just not say anything, all right? Izuku nods, and Hisashi claps his hands together. Good, now that that's out of the way. We need to go shopping for some school supplies. You already have a book bag, but we can get you another if you'd like. Dropping him off at school was scary to say the least. It wasn't like daycare where they could call at any time to check in on him. They were dropping their kid off at school for 7 hours, and between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. they would have no idea how their child was doing. Hisashi practically shook when he thought about it. He was still thinking about it when he pulled into the drop-off line. He had half a mind to just lock the doors and take him back home when he heard the door open and a tug on his hair to get his attention. Bye, Papa. I'll see you later. He freezes entirely. The door slammed and he watched as his son went and met with a certain blonde waiting by the doors. It wasn't until someone honked that he actually started to move. He rushes to Yue and practically crashes into the teacher's lounge, grabbing the attention of over half the sleepy staff, including his husband. Before Shota can even move on his own, Yamada is dragging him into the hallway. His eyes were filled with tears. What's wrong? What happened? Shota asks before he sees the dopey grin on his face. Shota, Yamada whispers excitedly. Shota, he called me Papa. Somewhere, deep inside, or maybe not so deep, Aizawa found the power to grin. He never smiles, especially at school, and never as wide as this. He listens to his husband tell the story, no doubt over-exaggerating, but he doesn't mind. In his head he can't help but think a little bitterly, how come he gets a name and I don't? School was easy, at least the actual school part. It was the kids that made it difficult. He was going on his second week, and he still had only one real friend. Even with Bakugo around to defend him, Izuku couldn't help but feel sad at his classmates' words. Yo, Deku, Katsuki calls out before he can get in line for lunch. We're eating outside today. He watches with wide eyes as his friend holds up 2 bento boxes and practically jumps with excitement. It had been forever since he has had Auntie Bakugo's cooking. They sit outside, with Bakugo glaring at any extra who happens to look their way until a steady conversation ensues. Do they know about your quirk? Izuku shakes his head, swallowing the spicy curry. No, I don't know if I'm going to tell them. Why not? I thought you said you trusted them. Bakugo accuses with his eyes narrowing. I do, and he does. Of all the months he'd been with them, they had done nothing but treat him with kindness. He was really happy. I'm scared. Everyone always wants me to use it, and Katsuki ruffles his friend's hair. I get it. That's okay. You don't have to tell them if you don't want to. Hell, you never have to use it again after what your dad did. He pauses, taking his hand from Izuku's head. And if they do make you use it, he clenches his fist, I will end them. He yells. Izuku's laugh is contagious, which explains how the two find themselves doubling over with laughter until the lunch bell rings, signaling their 5 minutes warning. Bakugo looks up. Damn, he motions to Izuku's box with his spoon. My mom will end me if I come back with leftovers. The two shovel the curry into their mouths until both boxes are empty. And when they stand up, large burps erupt from them simultaneously. The rest of the day goes by quickly and Izuku rushes to try and find his dad. Aizawa hated driving and tried to avoid it at all costs, so he was usually waiting by the front of the school to walk them home together. He pauses when he doesn't see him, and he tries to push down the little bit of panic. He looks at the pickup line, but doesn't see Yamada's car either. He waits a while. Even though his parents are never late, he holds out hope. The line is dwindling down when he hears someone honking. In the car is Midnight, who waves to him excitedly. The lady opens the back door for Izuku, but he stands with his arms crossed. What's the safe word? Nimuri looks surprised. Zuzu, I came over for dinner twice last week. Safe word, he demands. Her eyes widen. Geez, kid, fine. Pickles and sardines. His nose curls in disgust, but he gets in the backseat and buckles his seatbelt. Before she even gets out of the line, he questions her suspiciously. Where's Mr. Aizawa? He got caught up at school, so he asked me to bring you to your therapy appointment. Oh yeah. He uncrosses his arms and relaxes. Sorry, he mutters. She reassures him that she doesn't mind. What happened at school? I believe he's waiting on a student in the infirmary. Apparently a sparring match between 2 students got a little out of hand. But your dad's all right. She pauses. Her darling nephew hadn't referred to either Aizawa or Yamada as dad or papa since the first day. How was your day? He begins to retell his day, starting how Hisashi burnt a pancake and ending with his last maths lesson of the day. By the time he's done there at the office, Nimuri checks Izuku in and she explains that either Aizawa or Yamada will pick him up after his hour-long appointment. He's excited when he's called back to his therapist's office. He throws his backpack on the couch and sits on the ground so he's able to reach the table with blank papers and markers easier. Dr. Yoshida laughs. "It's nice to see you too, Izuku," he greets, closing the door. Izuku looks up sheepishly. "Sorry, how have you been?" he asks, taking a lid off the blue marker. "I've been all right, and yourself?" The man never sits at his desk when he talks to the little green-haired boy, always opting for the overstuffed armchair with his notebook in hand. "I'm okay. In school, how's that been going?" He begins scribbling on the paper a very basic body. "It's okay. I really like math and reading, but science is kind of hard." "I get that. What are you guys learning about in science right now?" Izuku glances up at him. "Fucking rocks." Dr. Yoshida laughs and agrees that it's a boring topic. This boy has come far since first meeting with him all those months ago. He barely said 15 words during their first session, and he tightly gripped Eraserhead's scarf the entire time. Now the kid walked in like he owned the place. "What about the other kids? Have you made any new friends?" Izuku shakes his head, grabbing another marker. "No, not really. No one really talks to me unless they're calling me names." "What kinds of names do they call you?" Izuku frowns. "It's really not that bad. Sometimes they call me a quirkless loser or a normie." "Does that make you upset?" Izuku shrugs, grabbing another piece of paper. "I don't know, sometimes. But Kaken helps. When he's around, no one says anything. And if they do, he yells at them to shut up." "Well, I'm glad that Katsuki helps you out. What does he say to you after the others call you names?" The doctor takes a few notes. "He tells me that I shouldn't listen to them, and that they're wrong." "What are they wrong about?" Izuku rolls his eyes. "Sometimes this man asked the most obvious questions. About me being a normie and a loser. He says that he wouldn't be friends with me if I was a loser." The doctor smiles gently, even though the boy's too focused on his drawing to look at him. "That's good, because you aren't a loser or a normie." He sets his pen down, turning his full attention to the boy. "Can I ask you why being called those names makes you upset?" Izuku's eyebrows scrunch together in concentration as he grabs a crayon to color. "I don't know." "Do you think it's because you don't have a quirk?" "Not having a quirk doesn't make you any diff, no." The boy glares straight at the doctor. "I don't want to talk about quirks." It had been a sensitive topic before. In fact, Yoshida hadn't even mentioned the word in over a month since the last time Izuku got defensive about it. "Okay, that's all right. We can talk about something else." Izuku nods and returns to his pictures. Yoshida makes a note to put in a request to see the young boy's medical records, in particular his foot x-ray. He wasn't so sure the boy was quirkless like he had previously thought. "How have you been sleeping?" The boy shrugs, but when the therapist doesn't say anything else, he sighs. "I don't think it's gotten any worse." "Is it still the same nightmare?" Izuku nods. "Let's talk about that some more." At the end of the session, Yoshida gets permission to discuss possible treatment for his insomnia with his parents. He calls Aizawa back into his office, leaving Izuku sitting in the waiting room flicking through an old magazine. "Is everything okay?" The man asks, worry present in his eyes. "Yes, everything's fine. I just brought you back here to discuss possible ways to help Izuku sleep better." Aizawa breathes a sigh of relief. "I don't like to prescribe kids under 13 sleeping medication, but if it continues to be a problem, I will reconsider." He suggests to Aizawa possibly getting his son some kids' melatonin gummies, and decreasing caffeine intake during the day. He suggests reading a story at night to put his mind at ease or playing some white noise to help the kid's anxiety. Shota puts all of this in his notes before Yoshida asks, "Had the bedwetting gotten any better?" Aizawa nods. "Kind of. It still happens at least once a week, but we put a mattress protector down a couple months ago." "That's good. Does he go to the bathroom right before you put him to bed?" The hero confirms the routine. If possible, check on him within 2 hours of him going to bed. Often it takes kids a while to fall asleep, so he might be drinking water during that time. If you see his water glass has a lot missing from it, consider waking him up at some point during the night to have him use the bathroom. That might help a bit. Aizawa makes another note and thanks the doctor before bringing Izuku home. "Is your student okay?" He looks down at the little hand in his as they climb the stairs to the apartment. "Yeah, he's all right. I don't know if you've heard of Recovery Girl, but she's a hero who can heal a lot of injuries." His eyes light up and he begins firing question after question about the hero. When he tires himself out, he goes to his room to do homework. And Aizawa hangs his drawings on the fridge, taking down the ones from last week's session and putting them in a folder. Izuku was cornered, and the boys were taunting him. "Come on, nerd. You gonna fight back or not?" one of them says, kicking him in the stomach. Izuku gasps and closes his eyes out of habit. He wants to go home, to see Bakugo, to see his dad and papa. He doesn't want to be here, he can't. He's nothing but a quirkless loser. The other one spits, kicking him in the face. A metallic taste fills his mouth as he begins to cry. "Oh, come on." The first one sneers, grabbing him by the collar. "There's gotta be something special about you to make Bakugo choose a pathetic loser over us." He slams the boy's head into the ground, making him see stars. He does his best, but he can't stop the tears from flowing down his face. The lunch bell rings, and one of the boys places a hand around his throat. If you tell anyone about this, I will kick your ass so hard you won't be able to shit for a month. He lands one last punch before running off to their classroom, leaving Izuku bloody on the ground. He stands quickly before anyone else comes into the hall. No one can see how pathetic he is. He rushes to the bathroom where a wave of dizziness hits him, causing him to slide to the ground. He locks the door and rushes to the toilet, vomiting the contents of his lunch into the bowl. He had become complacent, completely relying on Bakugo and his dads to protect him. No wonder he was so weak. He sobs even harder when he recognizes the second bell ring. Not only did he just get his ass kicked, but now he had to walk into class looking like the mess that he is. Bakugo was coming back from the doctor's next period, and Izuku knew he would be angry. He carefully picked up his bag, wiping his nose with his sleeve, dark blood staining the blazer. He peeks into the hall, and when he confirms no one is there, he runs to the nearest open window and begins his journey back to the apartment. His panic grows the closer and closer he gets. He was going to be in so much trouble. He cried even harder. He unlocked the door with his key and threw his bag on the ground, deciding the best option was to hide for now. His closet was dark, and fear gripped him, but the truth was, no one ever beat him when he was in there. His heart beats quickly as he climbs to the shelf on top of the rod, and smushes himself between blankets and extra pillows. He was sure no one could get him up here. His father would be furious, but ultimately too lazy to do anything extreme to get him down. He'd come out when he was hungry, but he could last a few days without food, and by then he hoped his injuries would heal enough to withstand another beating. His body continues to shake, but he feels himself growing slightly calmer with his plan to keep himself safe. No one ever hurt him in here. No one can if they can't reach him. With tears still rolling down his cheeks, he fell asleep. Yamato was horrified when he went to check his messages, and one came from Aldora saying that Izuku didn't show up to class. He ran to his husband's classroom, who was grabbing papers for the staff meeting, Shota. It was almost pathetic how out of breath he was from that short run. I can't find Izuku. I called the school and the Bakugos. I called the house phone, but no one answered, he cried. Wait, what's going on? Heihachi explained as quickly as he could, knowing his husband only checked his messages twice a day. The two rushed to the car as fast as they could go, sending a message to Nezu that a family emergency had come up. Aizawa found their apartment unlocked and their son's bag on the floor. Izuku, he yells, searching the apartment. Heihachi had driven to the school trying to get more information. Izuku. He opens his son's room to find his closet door open. He opens it wider and flicks on the light, hearing whimpering come from above him. Izuku, he sighs with relief. Get away from me. The boy screams, matching his husband in volume. He steps back. It had been so long since he had seen such terror in his eyes. Izu, it's me, Aizawa. I'm not going to hurt you, leave me alone. He sobs, causing the hero to tear up. His son has bruises on his face and a busted lip. Something must have happened at school to send him into a panic attack. No, not a panic attack, something else. He goes into the hall and sends a message to his husband and frantically searches for the PTSD pamphlet he was given so long ago. He looks it over, only half processing it before going back into the room. He stands as far away as he can while still in Izuku's line of vision. Izuku, he whispers quietly, trying to stay calm. Izuku, it's okay, you're going to be okay. The boy only sobs harder, which makes his heart flip. Baby, it's okay, it's okay. Baby, you're having a flashback. Heihachi isn't here anymore, I promise. I'm Aizawa. And no one's going to hurt you, okay? The sobbing quiets for a second, but Izuku is still panicking. He's never had a flashback before. How does he know this is real? Baby, I want you to take a deep breath, okay? He recognizes the voice, but is too afraid to look down. I can't. He sobs. A tear falls from Aizawa's eye. Baby, I know you can. I know you can, Izuku. Please, do it with me. He takes a loud breath, trying to calm himself and reassure his son at the same time. He does it repeatedly until he hears the boy try to copy him. Good, Izuku. Keep doing that. He hears deep strained breaths from in the closet, and he slowly pulls the pamphlet from his pocket. Izuku, you're doing so good. When you're ready, can you tell me where you are? A few minutes pass as the breathing becomes calmer. I'm in a closet, a scared voice whispers. Yes, you are. That's really good. What can you see, baby? He hears the front door open and footsteps rush down the hall. He quickly puts a finger to his mouth to keep his husband quiet. A blanket, a green blanket, and a pillow. I think I got blood on it. Heihachi's eyes widen in concern and Aizawa hands him the pamphlet. He nods in understanding, leaving the room so as not to overwhelm the boy when he finally looked down. Good, you're doing so great, Izuku. Can you smell anything, taste anything? He hears more sniffles, but the breathing is still calm. I think I can taste blood in my mouth. Okay, baby, he grimaces. God, he just wants to help his son. Izuku, do you know who I am? Your dad. His heart drops. Izuku still thought he was that bastard 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓. Before he can say anything else, Izuku says, Dad, can you please help me down? His eyebrows furrow in confusion before coming to the sudden realization that he knew who he was. Of course, Izuku. Do you mind if I get Papa? He's taller than me and can help get you down safer. The boy agrees and the two men help him down from the shelf. The young boy wraps the Aizawa in a hug and grabs Yamada's shirt to sandwich himself between the two. Neither of them make a move until Izuku does, carefully pressing himself away. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 gently touches his face, moving his hair away from his eyes. Izu, how about he go into the bathroom to get you cleaned up? He nods. Yamada wipes away the blood from his nose with a wet rag as Aizawa sits behind him with his head in their son's hair, who tightly grips his dad's scarf like he did all those months ago. Baby, can you tell us what happened? Izuku shakes his head, keeping his eyes closed when his papa moves to wiping the tear stains from his cheeks. Okay, I'm sure it must have been really scary. Yamada smiles. He continues to get his face washed. Though it's hard knowing that his husband is hiding his tears in the boy's curls, I won't press you to tell us what happened, but I need to know if you were hit anywhere else so we can take care of you, all right? He shifts, lifting his shirt to reveal his stomach. He had old scars, but it was the new forming bruise that stood out. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 warned him that it might hurt, but he needed to check if the rib was okay. He pressed a little, which caused their son to hiss and Aizawa to glare at his husband. It would be adorable if the situation wasn't so dire. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 places a kiss on the spot. Papa, I threw up at school too. He nods. You'll be okay, baby. You'll be sore for a few days, but you'll be okay as long as you take it easy. He stands. Do you think you can take a quick shower? The warm water will make you feel better, plus it'll get all that sweat off of you. Izuku hesitates. Dad, can you leave some of your scarf? He whispers, turning to the man behind him. I promise I won't get it wet. Aizawa smiles and nods, unable to get any words out. The two men leave the bathroom and go to Izuku's room. Aizawa just stares blankly at the wall while his husband grabs a towel, some pajamas, and a blanket. He takes the man's hand and drags him down the hall to the dryer where they throw the load in. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 turns to his husband. He had never seen him in this state before. He wraps him in his arms and holds him as he cries quietly. He was so scared, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓. I know, my love. He was scared of me, he whispers. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 grabs the man's shoulders and leans down to look him in the eyes. Hey, don't do that, not right now. But 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 yanks his husband's chin towards him, staring into his watery eyes. You know he wasn't scared of us. We did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. The only person to blame right now is his bastard of a father and maybe the little brats who did this to him. You know that. He drops his grip when he feels a hand brushing tears from his cheek. When did he start crying? He was getting better. Shota accuses. Dr. Yashido sighs and goes to sit on the table, motioning the heroes to the couch. Yamada obliges and glares at his husband to follow suit, but he remains standing with his arms crossed with a pointed glare. This is not a disorder that happens in a straight line. I made you aware of this when I first began my sessions with Izuku. Yeah, but this, Mike begins, putting his head in his hands. He's never had an episode like this before. That's because you two have kept him safe from any type of harm that could remind him of his past. It was bound to happen at some point. What the fuck does that mean? Shota, Mr. Aizawa. Dr. Yashido interrupts before the two can start an argument in his office. Please let me finish. The man looks at his husband who gives him a look, and he slouches into the couch cushion. This was bound to happen eventually because of how he's improving. He has confidence. He feels independent but not alone. He took the initiative to leave a scary environment but return to a home that gives him comfort. He feels safe enough to return home when he's panicking. If this had happened 7 months ago in the hospital, no doubt would he have run off again or needed a sedative to calm down. Is it going to happen again? Yamada asks after a moment of silence. The doctor looks between the two, both desperate to hear words he cannot give them. He runs his hands through his hair and pushes his glasses up his nose. I am a parent of 3, you know. I know how it feels to see your kid in pain and the desire to roll them in bubble wrap and never let them out of your sight. But raising a kid in fear is no way to raise a kid. Instead, all you can do is give them the right tools to get through hard stuff. So yes, it will most likely happen again, probably multiple times. But each time he'll learn new tricks to get through it. I've given him some coping mechanisms to practice when he feels anxious, so when something like this happens again, he might be able to call someone for help. The tool you give him is support and resources, and you are doing an excellent job with that. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗓 glances at Shota, who's just looking quietly at his hands. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make me feel too much better. He chuckles lightly. I would be genuinely surprised if it did. Leaving the office, Izuku bounces ahead to the car. The first night was rough. He woke both of the men a few times with his nightmares. The second night was a little better, though he did wet his bed, but he didn't wake up from any bad dreams when he joined his parents. The third night he managed to stay in his bed without any accidents. but the parents were woken up a few times during the night. This would be the fourth night, and neither one knew what to expect considering they were going back to the regular patrol schedule. They stopped for ice cream on the way home, planning on having leftovers for dinner anyway. Aizawa practically drops his cone when their son turns to them and asks, "Am I going back to school tomorrow?" Hazashi grips the other man's arm and responds with a caring smile, "If you would like to." He looks from one man to the other before landing on Shota, "Dad." His husband tightens his grip. Unnecessarily but worth noting, as long as you feel safe going, you can go. They finish their ice cream and within no time they're home with Izuku playing with action figures on the floor and the two men quietly chatting in the kitchen. "I don't like this," Aizawa grumbles. Hazashi sighs, "Neither do I, but you know Yoshido was right." Without looking up from slicing the cucumbers he responds, "It's not too late to go to the store and buy some bubble wrap." Tempting. Their cooking is methodical and peaceful with quiet back and forth banter. Sadly, the afternoon had taken longer than expected, so while Hazashi went and grabbed his gear, Aizawa worked on packing up the chicken and rice in a bento box with a small salad on the side. His son shouts, "Are you readyy?" The man barely has a second to cover his ears before his husband's response, "Ohhhyeah." Izuku tries to be even louder, "Ohyeah." He looks over at the two shouting at the top of their lungs, shaking the entire apartment. Izuku's hands are over his ears, but his grin is wide enough to brighten the entire apartment. Oh, how he regretted soundproofing the place when the two simultaneously screamed, "OOOHHYEAHHBABYY." Their little routine before Hazashi went out on patrol was, well, it was adorable, though Shota would never admit it, but the next part was his favorite. His husband walks into the kitchen, planting a firm kiss on his lips, pressing him back into the counter. Izuku scrunches his nose, just like he did every time, and make a noise of disgust before Hazashi would pull away and pick him up and pretend to fly him around the kitchen. Shota grabs his arm and places a softer kiss when the boy is on the ground again. "Be safe, my love." Hazashi grins and reassures him, "As always, dear." "I'll kill them," Bakugo roars. Izuku pulls him back to sit on the bench outside, shushing him though it never works. "Stop, Kaken, who was it? Was it the little bitch who sits in the back?" Him and his little lackey." Izuku glares at his friend. "Stop it, Kaken. I mean it. I don't want you to be angry right now. I want you to listen to me." The blonde is still simmering, but shoves a bite of sushi into his mouth nonetheless. "You have until this is gone before I go and kick their asses." Izuku sighs, but gives up. Hopefully by the time he was done his friend would have cooled down a little. "Kaken, I don't want to be weak anymore." "You're not weak," he growls back, but Izuku puts a hand up. "I want to be like my dads, like you. I think I want to be a hero." Kaken grins widely. That's the only answer he needs to know his friend believes he can do it. The two chatter the rest of their lunch break away, talking about training after school and wondering if they could start lifting weights. The blonde points out that if Izuku wants to get stronger he'd have to start eating more, which makes the boy nod eagerly. Katsuki suggests asking Aizawa and Yamada for help, which causes the conversation to fall short. "I don't think I'm going to tell them yet," he says quietly. Bakugo pauses, his red eyes narrowing. "Why not?" Izuku lays back on the bench, sighing dramatically. "My dads are just really protective of me. I want to get stronger first so they don't have to worry about me as much." Bakugo follows his friend and lays the opposite way so their shoes are touching. "All right, that makes sense. I have a condition too." His friend doesn't respond, so he continues. "We don't tell your dads why we're training? Fine. But I also won't help you train your quirk. Deal?" Izuku thinks for a second. Bakugo would be the only person he would trust to use his quirk on. But his quirk tended to make people mad, so deal. Izuku tells his friend that he has therapy on Mondays and Thursdays, and they agree to meet on Wednesdays and Fridays for the time being, since Aizawa and Yamada like to do stuff all together on weekends. On the walk home he asked his dad, too excited to wait, "Can I go home with Kaken tomorrow?" Aizawa was surprised at his son's enthusiasm. He hadn't even had the chance to interrogate him about his school day yet. "Well, it depends. Will his parents be home?" Izuku seems prepared for this, which added even more to Aizawa's suspicions. "Yeah, Kaken and I will walk to his house together, and Mrs. Bakugo usually gets home around 4. Aizawa looks at his kid, who grins up at him. "So, you and Katsuki will be walking alone to an empty house." Kaken walks home alone every day. The hero hums to himself. The kid had a very powerful quirk, but he wasn't entirely comfortable with his son going to his old neighborhood without an adult there to look after him. He thinks about what the therapist said and ruffles his son's hair. "Let me talk to Hazashi about this, and we'll let you know tonight, okay?" The kid wasn't happy with the answer, but it wasn't a complete refusal, so he wasn't too upset. He answered his dad's questions about the day and about the other kids because nobody tried to pick a fight today. Izuku was doing his homework when 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 came home and 𝗧𝗘 pulled his husband into their room to discuss the request. They spoke in hushed whispers, but both reluctantly agreed. They gave their son strict instructions. He had to call 𝗧𝗘 as soon as he got to Bakugo's house, and if he called even a minute past 3:20 the hero would go and pick him up. He had to have Mrs. Bakugo call as soon as she arrived home too. They weren't allowed to leave the yard without either of the parents present, and he had to be ready by 6 to be picked up by 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡. Their son quickly ran to the phone to call his friend as 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 wrote down the instructions for the next afternoon, knowing his son had already forgotten them as 𝗧𝗘 pouted at the table. So the boys began training, and their huffing and puffing decreased as the weeks went by. Not one of the rules altered, but the anxiety became more manageable for the two parents. Their son was happy, a little more tired than usual, but that didn't affect the radiant energy he gave. He always ate seconds every night, and began asking for more food in his lunches, which neither parent protested. It was about the 6th week of training when Izuku approached Bakugo with a request. "Fight me, Kaken." The blonde raises his eyebrows. He knew he could beat his friend, but he wanted to see how the strength training has been working. The fight was short, but longer than they both expected it to be. After a swift kick to the stomach, Izuku can't help but grin after his defeat. "That was awesome, Kaken." Bakugo smiles back at him and helps him off the ground. "Of course it was. I'm awesome," he taunts. Izuku pushes his friend, which causes another wrestling match to ensue until both boys are covered in grass stains and dirt. They lay on the ground laughing before Izuku says, "I think we did pretty good, but we need to learn some actual fighting techniques." Bakugo huffs, but knows he's right. "Yeah, I think so too." They brainstorm different ways to learn, from YouTube tutorials, to watching hero videos, to asking Eraserhead. Bakugo huffs, knowing that his dad had one of the most impressive fighting styles of all heroes, especially with how successful he was fighting Quirkless. They agree to study YouTube tutorials on their own and see how that works before they go back to strength training, racing to see who can finish 50 push-ups first. After a particularly bad dream that weekend, Izuku made his way to his parents' bedroom. Aizawa was on patrol, and upon feeling the pressure on the bed, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 opens his eyes and spreads his arms for his son to cuddle into him. "Do you want to talk about it, baby?" Izuku shakes his head. He's opened up to them a few times before, but he just wants to go back to sleep in his papa's arms. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 wakes up a couple hours later to his husband getting under the covers. He glances at the clock. "Show, is everything all right?" Aizawa presses his head into his husband. There's sun in between them. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 notices the tears in his eyes and places a kiss on his forehead. "It was bad, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡." The blonde slowly moves his arm so as not to wake their son and places it on his husband's cheek. "Are you okay?" Aizawa holds up his wrist, which even in the dim light he can see bruising littering the skin. "It's just a sprain," he whispers. Izuku listens, careful to keep his breathing even though tears are welling in his eyes. His dad was hurting. He felt the man place a kiss in his hair, and he decides, before either man can say a word, Izuku turns and grabs his dad's hand, placing it on his forehead. It had been so long since he had used his quirk, but he wasn't scared. He just wanted his dad to be better. "Zuko?" Aizawa asks. The kid takes a deep breath and inhales the pain to his own body, feeling it spread from his head to his neck to his shoulder and elbow, and finally to his wrist. He grimaces, his eyes still closed. "It hurts, but he's definitely taken away much worse. Did it work, Dad?" he whispers. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 asks what's happening, unable to see his son's movement when Aizawa's heart stops. He takes his hand from his son's head, the bruising completely gone. "Izuku, what did you do?" He pretends to have fallen asleep. "Izuku, what the hell did you do?" his dad says lowly. He begins to whimper and presses further into his papa. The blonde wraps him in his arms, feeling his shaking body. "Shota, you're scaring him." Izuku can feel his dad's chest beating loudly before he gets up and turns on the light. The boy tries to hide under the cover, but it's gently taken off of him, despite his tone. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 sits up and looks from his husband to his son, gasping when he sees the injuries had switched. "I'm only going to ask once more, Izu. What did you do?" He sniffles, sitting up and curling into his papa's side. It's my quirk," he responds, tears filling his eyes. His voice seems so little, so timid. He hasn't spoke like this since the week in the hospital. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 presses a kiss to his forehead. "Baby, your dad and I are going to get you some ice. Please don't move, baby, we will be right back." He curls under the covers, refusing to watch his parents leave the room. Aizawa whispers an explanation to his husband, both in complete shock. Their son has a quirk. Their son has had a quirk this entire time and had been too scared to tell them about it. And Aizawa's reaction didn't help the matter. It was already 5 in the morning, and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 sends a text to Recovery Girl and Nezu. Recovery Girl owed the loud blonde a favor, and they were hoping Nezu could explain to them what the hell just happened. They grabbed the ice and a glass of water, deciding they were going to talk to their son about this, desperate for an explanation. However, when they entered, their son was fast asleep in the middle of their bed. Aizawa still wanted to wake him up, but Hisashi stopped him, shaking his head. He laid down, holding the ice to their son's wrist while Aizawa turned off the light. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't fall asleep. "Izuku, look at me." He was surprised to find both his papa and dad picking him up. It was usually Papa who took him to the Monday appointment. He continues to look at his hands in his lap before his dad snaps again. "Izuku Midoriya." He looks at his papa who just stares at the road before bringing his eyes to his dad who's almost completely turned in his seat to face him. Recovery Girl had healed his wrist yesterday, and after he explained his quirk to Nezu and his dads, they said they needed some time to process. Guess they had their time. "I am sorry if I scared you at all, but you can never, and I mean never, use your quirk on me or Hisashi ever again." Izuku nods, his dad's tone more serious than it had ever been. He had seen him upset before, annoyed, yeah, but never angry. This was new. I wanted to help. "I know, but you absolutely cannot help us if it means you are going to hurt yourself." His gaze softens a little, but his words are just as mad as before. "If this happens again, you will be grounded until you're out of high school. Do you understand?" The boy nods, looking away, which causes his dad to snap again. "Do you understand, Izuku?" Yeah, I got it," he says quietly. Before the boy even sets foot in the office, he asks Yoshida if his dads can be in today's session, even though the therapist is already aware. Izuku explains what happened during the weekend. The doctor instructs the boy to begin coloring and goes to fetch his parents, who are talking quietly in the waiting room area. Izuku doesn't even glance at Aizawa and Yamato when they enter the room and sit behind him on the couch. Yoshida takes his place in his chair and jots a few things down. Before asking, "So, how have you been, kiddo?" he shrugs, obviously nervous having his dads in the room. "Okay, I think I can understand why. How's school going?" "It's all right," he says quietly, grabbing a colored pencil to shade in a wall of a building. "We finished the unit in science last week. I forgot to mention that last time." Yoshida grins. "So, no more rocks." The boy smiles. "No more rocks." They talk about the new science unit, and it seems as though the boy is much more interested in the plants they're looking at in class than the rocks. Finally, when that conversation is exhausted, Yoshida asks, "So I understand something happened this weekend?" Izuku nods, scraping some of the crayon off with his fingernail to create a window. "When was the last time you used your quirk?" Izuku bites his lip, looking up at the nice man, feeling his parents shift behind him. It was before I ran away." "So you were about 8 years old." Izuku nods, going back to coloring as his doctor scribbles stuff down. "I know I've asked about your quirk before, but you don't like talking about it. Can I ask why?" Izuku begins drawing a figure by the building with a red marker. Hisashi would. Sometimes he'd hit me and I'd get hurt that way, but sometimes he would. He trails off, prompting the doctor to ask, "What would he do, Izuku?" His lip begins to shake. And it takes everything in his parents' will to not get on the floor next to him to comfort him. He would. He'd make me help him. Sometimes, his friends would get in trouble. I'd have to help them too. Yoshida asks for specifics. He takes a shaky breath. I would take away their injuries. But then I'd have those same injuries if I didn't take them. He wouldn't give me food until I did. He looks at the person he drew and grabs a black crayon, scribbling hard over the face. When I left, I didn't want anyone else to know in case they made me hurt again. Did anyone know what was happening? Kakin knew about it, but I didn't tell him. He sniffles. I didn't tell him about my quirk until I was 7, and I took away the bruise on his face. He figured out what my dad made me do. Did he try to tell anyone? Izuku hugs his knee with one arm, weakly continuing to cover the face with the black crayon. I told him not to. That my dad, Hisashi, would take me away if he did. He took me away anyways. Dr. Yashido leans forward. He had assumed Hisashi had isolated his son, but he had no confirmation until this point. What happened when he took you, Izuku? The boy started to shake, but his head snaps up to meet the doctor with angry eyes. I don't want to talk about that anymore. He can see the parents tense behind the boy, and he smiles calmly to reassure him. That's fine. That must have been a very scary situation, and we don't have to talk about that if you don't want to. I don't. Yoshida puts his hands up and looks to Aizawa. Mr. Aizawa, I understand that Izuku used his quirk this weekend on you. He nods stiffly and the doctor almost chuckles. The boy and Aizawa were very similar in some ways. Do you mind telling me what happened? He glances at his husband and back down to his son, who started a new picture. I came back early from patrolling. I had to help evacuate an area, and a lot of people got hurt, so I was upset. Yoshida nods. Did you sustain any injuries yourself? His gentle tone was beginning to annoy Shota. He much preferred his own therapist. I sprained my wrist. Did you go to the hospital to get treatment? Well, no. He feels his as she put his hand on his arm. Like I said, I was upset, so I came home to be with my family. Why do you think you were so upset? Shota glares at him, looking between the doctor and Izuku, trying to convey that he doesn't want to tell his son. As a hero, you see many gruesome things. I should have clarified. I apologize. I'm not speaking of injuries or victims. I want to know the thoughts behind why you were upset. Izuku smiles to himself when his dad doesn't answer. Dr. Yoshida did this a lot, wanting to know feelings behind scenarios rather than the situations himself. Clearly he was better at therapy than his dad. Do you think it could be because you felt helpless? That you couldn't help enough people? Aizawa grips his husband's hand. Of course he felt that. That was the main struggle of any person. Dr. Yoshida speaks again. Izuku, is it safe to assume you don't like using your quirk? He nods, putting a cap on a marker. It's scary. But you did it anyways. Can I ask why? Izuku thinks for a second, tears filling his eyes as he turns back to his parents. Dad, you were crying. You and Papa, you helped me so much, and that was the only way I knew how to help you. He opens his arms to the boy, who jumps into the hug, closing his eyes into his shoulder before looking to the doctor, who asks, do you kind of understand now, Mr. Aizawa? He nods. Both Bakugo and Izuku felt relief when the two heroes became aware of his healing quirk. However, that meant in addition to his twice-a-week therapy, he had to add quirk therapy on top of that, further limiting the days they could train together. Izuku had tried to convince the two men that he could just see Dr. Yoshida once a week now, but that proved to be a waste of time. Until the doctor himself suggested it, Izuku was stuck. School was almost over for the year, and the two lay in the grass completely worn out when Izuku suggested the two go to the beach. It was near Izuku's house, so Mrs. Bakugo could drop him off when they were finished. When they went inside, she wasn't there, having left a note that she was going to run some errands. Izuku was hesitant, but his friend convinces him by bringing up how they went to a convenience store many times by themselves. So Izuku borrows a pair of swim trunks and they go to the beach, hoping that she would meet them there. They play together for a long time, splashing each other as they wrestle in the water. Eventually, they settle for throwing a frisbee back and forth, both trying to use the momentum of the waves to jump up and catch it. Hey, Deku. Katsuki motions him over to the beach. He grabs the frisbee and makes his way over, seeing two students in the distance sparring with each other. Staying low to the water, they track them to the beach. They were definitely high schoolers, and Izuku could hear one whine, Mirio-chan, I want to go home. Just a little longer, please. The blonde begs. Bakugo gasps before running out of the water and towards them, whispering excitedly to his friend, they're UA students. Hey, Bakugo calls out, gaining their attention. Izuku flinches. Kaken never sounds friendly. Do you two losers go to UA? The purple guy turns red in the face, turning away from the little boys while the blonde laughs. Sure do. My name is Mirio. And this is 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘. We're first years. Bakugo fires off question by question about UA, the tests to get in, and what their classes are like, which Mirio answers enthusiastically. Izuku decides to go up to the boy who had walked away. Hi, my name's Izuku. The boy freezes, turning only halfway towards him. My name's 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘, he whispers. That's cool. I saw you and Mirio-san fighting a little bit, and your squid arms are so cool. Izuku cheers, trying to get the other boy to relax a bit. He pulls a tight-lipped smile. Thank you. You want to be a hero too. He wants to smack himself in the face for all of his stuttering. How was anyone supposed to understand him if he couldn't even say a sentence? I do. Will you train us? What? The boy jumps back in surprise, shocked by the confidence exuding from the young boy. I'm only a F first year. Izuku sits on the sand with a sheepish smile. Yeah, but you know how to fight. My quirk isn't really for fighting, but I want to learn. Hey Deku, you're not groveling to that bastard, are you? Kaken yells, storming towards the boy. Izuku swears he hears the boy before him whimper, despite being an entire head taller than the blonde. Mirio walks over as well, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 quickly hiding behind him, though when he sits next to Izuku he's left standing. Izuku doesn't think he's stopped blushing since they arrived. He wants us to train them. He mutters into Mirio's back, also in the sand now. That would be awesome. He throws his fist into the air. More people to practice with. What are your quirks? How old are you? What's your primary fighting style? Wait, what style do you want to learn? Do you want us to bring snacks? 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 always has the best snacks. Even Bakugo can't help but smirk, and the two answer all the questions he asks. Izuku even trusts him enough to tell him his quirk. They agree to meet up late Friday night around 9 p.m. The younger two leave first, noticing Mrs. Bakugo must not have seen their note, so they race back to the house, 5 minutes before she pulls into the garage. Well, you boys look positively exhausted. Let's get you guys some snacks. Izuku crumples the note behind his back as she speaks. Izuku hates lying to his parents, but he really wanted to be a hero. So every Friday night up until school got out for break, Izuku would slowly open his window before bed. His dad tends to fall asleep by 8:30 every night to prepare for his shift patrolling at 1 in the morning. He was quiet as he swung his legs over the windowsill. Luckily, they were on the second floor of the apartment, so he was able to grab onto the bars of the fire escape by their living room and pull himself up. He would quietly scurry down the stairs and run to the beach, stuffing his green hair into a hat. During the night, they didn't fight with quirks, not wanting to draw attention to Bakugo's loud explosion. The younger boys genuinely shocked Mirio with their skills they'd learned from YouTube. Tonight, Izuku fights Mirio while Bakugo tries to take down Amajiki. Izuku crouches low. Mirio had taught him that when going up against opponents bigger and stronger than he was, the best way to take them down was through speed and deception. Except Mirio was pretty damn fast too. Izuku tries to get on offense, but soon finds himself preoccupied with defending the blonde's harsh attacks. When Mirio lands a kick to his stomach that sends him flying, he quickly realized that speed alone wouldn't win this fight, so he quickly comes up with a plan. He charges towards the blonde, running as fast as he can despite his lack of breath. But while Mirio waits for him to attack, he slides between the boy's legs and swipes his foot to take out his ankles. He pounces on top of him, with a shit-eating grin on his face. "That was cool, Izuku-chan." Mirio cheers, but the fight's not quite over. Mirio uses his legs to throw the two up, and quickly pins the middle schooler in the sand. Izuku pouts, but that's not fair. Mirio laughs before standing and helping him up. "It's okay, Izuku. Right now I'm supposed to beat you. But if you want to be hero, you have to know." He gets serious for a second. "It's not always going to be fair, kiddo." Izuku nods and the two watch as Amajiki continues to dodge the merciless Bakugo. It's a few days before school lets out, so the four take the week off to prepare for finals. Izuku has an idea when he enters UA to attend quirk therapy with Principal Nezu. "I'll be in my classroom," Aizawa mutters before scurrying away to avoid his boss. Izuku walks into the office and Nezu sits at his desk. "Midoriya, it is very nice to see you again." He stands tall in front of him. "Can I tell you something? And you won't tell my parents," not even bothering to correct him on the name. The creature nods and Izuku explains how he's been training with a couple of UA students at night and he has an idea about his quirk. He asks Nezu if Mirio Tagata can come and try to do it. Nezu nods excitedly. He never experimented on children, but he did love to see their curiosity manifest into something great. Soon the blonde is in the room, and as soon as he sees Izuku, he gives him a big hug. Nezu locks the door when he realizes the two begin to take their shirts off. Izuku explains, "Okay, so this bruise right here." He points to the bruise Mirio had given him during their last match. "I want to see if I can transfer it to him. Can I try it, Mirio?" Mirio nods excitedly. The kid almost never talks about his quirk, and he had given him the bruise in the first place. Nezu seems a tad reluctant, but more interested, so he allows it to continue. "So if you had the bruise and I was trying to take it, I would have to touch right here," he mutters, talking himself through it. Okay. He closes his eyes, focusing on the soreness of the bruise within his own body. He can imagine it traveling from his ribs to his chest to his hand and onto Mirio's stomach, and when he looks up he jumps back in surprise. Where there hadn't been a mark before, a slight bruise was beginning to form. He looked at his own stomach and saw the bruise had faded significantly. It must have been the drop in focus that didn't let it transfer all the way. "Izuku, that was so cool." He gives Mirio a small smile before turning to Nezu, who is also grinning. "Well done, Midoriya. That was a fantastic idea that you had. Please, call me Izuku." He turns back to Mirio, grimacing slightly. Do you want me to take it back now? You're all good, kid." He gives him a thumbs up. When the first year leaves, Nezu speaks up. "I would like to discuss this development with your fathers. Please don't." Izuku begs, before lowering his voice. "Can we just wait until I can do it consistently? Or I guess wait until I can find a way to use my quirk without hurting myself or others." Oh dear, the creature did not like the sound of this. He's happy the boy trusted him, but the truth was the wasn't like common therapy, it's closer to a class than anything. He wants to tell Aizawa and Yamada so they can keep an eye on their child, and so he didn't experiment too dangerously without an adult present. However, Nezu sighs looking into his green puppy dog eyes and agrees to keep it between them. For now, he emphasizes. School was about to start up again, and Izuku thought he was finally ready to tell his dads about his new dream of becoming a hero. He went over the plans with Kaken and the UA students, who decided that him and Mirio would spar to show off his new skills. "I'm not going to let you win, Izuku-chan." "Good," the boy responds daringly. It was Saturday, and the boys agreed to meet at the beach around 2. The morning in the Yamada Aizawa household went as it always did. Hazashi sat reading the newspaper, occasionally saying things to his husband, who was half asleep slumped against the kitchen table. Izuku sits at the coffee table in the living room, alternating between his donut puzzle, cartoons, and his bowl of soggy cereal. His papa finally sends Dad to shower to help wake him up. 𝗧𝗘𝗧𝗟𝗘 grumbles something the kid can't quite hear, so he teases when the man walks past, "You're showering. Good, because you smell." The man is across the room in a second, smothering the green-haired boys in a hug. "Oh yeah, little shit. Guess I have to get my stink all over you." Izuku struggles against his dad's arms, fake gasping as he calls out to his Ashi, "Papa, Dad's trying to kill me. Shota, please don't kill our child." His papa doesn't even look up from his paper before adding, "But if you must, try not to make a mess." Izuku groans before squealing when he feels Shota's hands begin to tickle him and he begins screaming laughing. His dad only ceases when the freckled boy is entirely red in the face. "Now you'll need a shower after me," the man grins, "and I won't leave you any hot water." Izuku pouts but doesn't say anything else when Aizawa walks down the hall into the bathroom. During lunch, Izuku manages to convince them to go to the beach, despite Aizawa's protests. The young boy grabs his trunks and drags the men to the beach, showing up a few minutes late. Izuku calls out to his friends, running ahead of his dad's. All three turn towards the kid running at them. Mirio gives him a fist bump and looks up at the two men approaching from the distance. His eyes widen and he turns to 𝗧𝗏𝗡, who's lost every bit of color in his face. Izuku. Why is Mr. Aizawa here?" The shy boy whispers. He tilts his head. "I told you I was bringing my dad's." Mirio feels his heart stop. Holy shit. These two little kids have been sneaking out to train, but one of these little shits was the son of the scariest teacher in school. Aizawa's hair flies back when he recognizes the two UA students. Is it too late to run? 𝗧𝗏𝗡 whispers. Mirio nods, feeling his friend's face press further into his back. Beside Aizawa is a familiar face, though he can't quite place it until he imagines that blonde hair having an entire jar of gel in his hair. Present Mike. 𝗧𝗏𝗡 wants to vomit. You know it was a bad situation when brave Mirio was worried. "Dads, this is Mirio and 𝗧𝗏𝗡," Izuku introduces. Both him and Bakugo looking between the two groups confused. "I know." Yamada crosses his arms. "I'm their homeroom teacher." He snaps at the purple-haired boy behind Mirio. "Get out, 𝗧𝗏𝗡, you're not in trouble." He hesitantly takes a step to the side of his friend, and physically cowers when he sees the two men's glares. Bakugo steps in, ready to fight in exchange for this awkwardness. "Look, Izuku and I have been starting to train for UAS entrance exams, and these two losers have been helping us. We want to show you what we got." Aizawa doesn't say a word, nor does his hair fall. Mirio tries to laugh, doing his best to keep the smile on his face. "All right then. Izuku-chan and I are going to spar today. Same rules as always, no quirks, and no fighting in the water." They walk away from the group a ways. Both Hisashi and Aizawa stand with their arms crossed. "You didn't tell us your dads were pro-heroes." Izuku narrows his eyes. "Do not take it easy on me." The fight begins as it always done, with Mirio trying to take the boy down in close combat with the boy defending himself. He lands a few blows and Izuku is able to use the momentum from one to get a bit of distance between the two. He doesn't need time to plan. He had been practicing this move on Kaken all week, though it failed more times than it was successful. Still, if Mirio wasn't expecting it, there's no reason it shouldn't at least slow him down. Mirio waits, expecting him to try to slide under him when he starts running, but instead Izuku fakes the boy out by sidestepping, forcing Mirio to turn, but instead uses the momentum of the step to jump off the boy's thigh. The move was supposed to make it so Izuku would land with his legs on his opponent's shoulder, but Kaken was much shorter, so he underestimated how high he needed to jump. Mirio reaches for the boy's foot, but instead he's pulled back by arms around his neck, pulling him back with legs around his torso, contracting to flip him towards the ground. Mirio lands on his face, spitting sand from his mouth as Izuku quickly recovers from the fall. Mirio is able to turn over in time to defend himself from a swing from Izuku. The blonde can't help but grin widely. The kid was turning into quite a fighter. He catches the fist, but the wind's knocked out of him when Izuku sends his knee into the boy's stomach. Mirio uses the fist to sit up and get under the boy's shoulder, flipping him to the ground. It takes a second to catch his breath, but he's quick to get up and face Izuku standing. Mirio is forced onto the defensive, blocking punch after punch, hoping to wear the boy down. It takes some time, but finally he is able to force the boy into the sand by taking out his ankles with a swift sidekick. Izuku is unable to recover quick enough and finds himself pinned by the ultimately stronger boy. He huffs and puffs trying to find a way to get out of the position, but after a few minutes of struggling he gives in. "All right, you win. Now how would I get out of this?" The two parents watch how their student explains that the boy needs to engage his core when he's pinned, adding further force to his efforts to escape. Mirio had less force in his legs, so his best bet to get out of this was to activate his core and use it to propel his legs from Mirio's knees and stomping his ankles. Mirio keeps his weight shifted the same way it was during their fight, and they watch as Izuku struggles to free his legs. But eventually he's successful. Mirio helps the boy up and walks over to the heroes, smiling sheepishly. "What did you think, Papa? Wasn't that cool?" 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 forces a grin, scratching his neck and glancing at his husband. You did very well. Izuku feels his heart skip at the lack of enthusiasm from his usually very energetic dad. He turns to Aizawa. What do you think? He asks, looking at the man hopefully. Aizawa nods, his hair having relaxed a tad during the fight. You thought well during the fight, he adds bitterly to the blonde, and you gave some good advice, Tagata. The student beams at the compliment, though his relief is cut off a bit when Aizawa continues. But you should have been able to take him down within half that time. You're going into your second year at UA. I would hope you've learned more than that by now and been able to take down a 12-year-old easier. You're right. Even the criticism doesn't completely destroy the boy's mood. That's why we've been practicing so much without our quirks and in close combat. I want to get better and I will be sure to work even harder, sensei. Aizawa and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 take their son home after the match, leaving the other three to continue their fights. No one says a word until they walk into the apartment. Hey dads, Izuku asks quietly before Aizawa even has a chance to place his keys on the kitchen counter. Are you guys mad at me? Yamato looks at his kid sadly. No baby, we're just a little. He looks at his husband to help him out. We're just a little upset. He continues, motioning the boy to sit down. Izuku, Aizawa joins his family at the table. Why didn't you ask us? Or tell us you wanted to be a hero? The boy looks at his hands, biting his lip. I wanted to be stronger first, show you that I could do it. The two men stiffen. They're heartbroken to hear that their son felt he had to prove something to them. I can't really fight with my quirk, but I want to help people and help you guys. You saved me, and I guess I want to save others like you. Aizawa nods reluctantly, looking at his son. It takes a second, but he asks, when did you start training? Izuku glances at his papa, whose usually expressive face is completely blank. He responds nervously, about halfway through the school year, Kaken and I started strength training. At the end of the year we went to the beach and met Mirio and Amajiki, and we asked them to teach us to fight. Shota narrows his eyes. I wasn't aware Mrs. Bakugo had taken you to the beach before. She didn't. The boy continues. We went by ourselves, he admits. Aizawa sighs. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Izuku wanted to come clean. He didn't like keeping things from them. It made him feel tense and anxious, like all the time, sometimes. Kaken and I would sneak out at night to go train with them. His dad just nods and sends him to his room for a while. He turns to his husband, worried about his lack of enthusiasm. Izuku can hear the two whispering to each other but runs to his room when his papa yells at him. In all honesty, he had expected Aizawa to be more upset by the situation. When little ears weren't listening, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 cries to his husband, "It's our job to protect him, Shota. He's been going out on his own, sneaking out at night. And now we're supposed to let him put himself in danger's way by encouraging him to become a hero. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡, no, Shota. You know what it's like out there." Izuku is practically defenseless. That's not up to us to decide, Aizawa reminds him. He had actually discussed these fears recently with his therapist. We have to support him. He's our baby. Aizawa wraps his 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 in his arms. I know. I don't like it either. But we will help him with this as much as we can. We know what to teach him and how to train him. All we can do right now is teach him how to protect himself and let him know we'll always be beside him. Izuku lays on his bed, bored out of his mind as he tosses a ball towards the ceiling. He was grounded for a month after he told his parents he'd been sneaking out, and he had to watch them install security cameras on the fire escape and by the front door to the apartment. The new security system wasn't just to keep Izuku from leaving when he wasn't supposed to. Since he was grounded and Aizawa and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 went back to teach, he was home alone more often. For an entire month, Izuku wasn't allowed to go anywhere but school and therapy. He came home right after school and went to his room to study until one of his dads came home and checked that his homework was done. One perk about being grounded and being home alone was 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 had finally agreed to get him a phone. He spent most of his time studying and strength training, but when he finished all that he would text Kaken and Mirio. Mirio had told him that tossing a ball would improve his hand-eye coordination, and in the most respectful way possible. Izuku thought he was full of shit. He did it anyway. It tended to keep his mind occupied for a little while, though after training hard all summer he couldn't help but feel as if he was slacking off. He looked forward to his quirk therapy because that meant he could see Mirio, who had agreed to be a guinea pig to a certain extent. He hadn't gotten very far, but Nezu wanted to take it slow, which annoyed him. Izuku had more ideas about how he could use his quirk. He wanted to see if he could take an injury from one person and give it to another, or if he could change the position of them on someone's body. More than anything, he wanted to see if he could possibly just transfer the injuries to inanimate objects. He goes into the living room and turns on the TV, watching Heroes Ultimate Fights on YouTube. He finds one of Lock Rock and decides to try to replicate some of his moves. He pushes the coffee table against the wall and rewinds the video, playing it step by step. He does it again and copies the moves slowly. Izuku lays with his back on the ground. He plays and pauses it again quickly, engaging his core to lift his legs off the ground and curl them towards his face. He sends it and promptly knees himself in the face. He sits up and watches the video again, learning things with each mistake he makes. He hits himself in the face, lands directly on his back or his butt, and even just mislanding it and somersaulting forwards multiple times, only landing correctly once. Knowing it's possible, he tries even more, and it's when his legs completely buckle under him and he does a somersault straight into the shelf with pictures and books on it when the front door opens. Izuku's legs are entirely up against the wall when his face pops between them to smile at Aizawa, who just sighs and disables the security system. Izuku scrambles to his feet to greet his dad, but before he gets the chance, Aizawa tells him to get his shoes. What? Izuku asks. Even when he wasn't grounded, he was supposed to be in the house getting ready for dinner at this time. Go grab your shoes. I don't want you practicing in the house. In a matter of seconds, he's pulling his shoes onto his feet, basically jumping out the door to follow his dad. They go into the backyard of the apartment building where Aizawa takes his seat on the steps and pulls a book from his bag. Run until you're tired. Izuku tilted his head and looked at the yard. The grass was trimmed and it was kind of nice, but it was only about 100 meters on each side. Go, Aizawa says, annoyed. So Izuku starts to run, half wondering if he's just doing this so he'd want to go to bed earlier, which means his dad can go to bed earlier. That wasn't going to happen, the boy thought to himself. Their show was on tonight. So he ran around the square yard, watching as his dad slowly make progress in his book. He doesn't even see the man look up when he says, "If that's as fast as you can go, we have a lot more work than I thought." Izuku narrows his eyes, taking it as a challenge. He runs faster, his breath beginning to struggle. He learns quickly to plant his outside foot for corners to get a better push-off when he turns. He makes it twice around the yard before he starts struggling and slows down for a length before his dad calls out, "Tired already, Izuku?" Izuku grimaces, too out of breath to respond, but pushes harder. He's not as fast as in the beginning, but he manages to get a few more laps at this pace before his chest feels too tight to move. He falls to his knees before he gets to the stretch his dad's on, gasping for breath. He tries to keep his head up but ends up with his entire chest slouched into the ground. He doesn't even notice his dad had gotten up until his shoes are in front of him. "Get up, Izuku. Do a few more laps." Izuku shakes his head, both his legs and chest on fire. I can't." The hero crosses his arms, looking down at his son. "Get up and do a few more laps." The boy doesn't even attempt to move. "Now, Izuku," he snaps. He struggles to get up, his knees threatening to buckle. He looks at his dad, who doesn't say another word, only motions with his hand to continue forward. His muscles cramp as he starts with a jog, still heaving for breath. He knows he has to move faster, so he thinks of the breakdown of each movement from every part of his legs to try and ignore the pain. He's not very fast, but he manages to run it 3 more times before Aizawa stops him and says, "You get 30 seconds once I'm done speaking." Izuku nods, his hands on his knees as he tries to breathe. "After those 30 seconds, you will sprint this one more time as fast as you can. If I sense you holding back, you will get 15 seconds before you do another, so on and so forth." Aizawa puts his hand in his son's hair. "Your time starts now." He pulls his phone out and begins the timer, going back to his place on the stairs. Izuku focuses on his breath, trying to at least steady it before he has to begin again. Aizawa starts the countdown from 10 and Izuku quickly looks up, unable to believe how quickly that time had passed. When he gets to 5, Izuku readies himself. He doesn't know if he'd be able to do another lap if he couldn't finish it here. He runs as fast as he possibly can. Izuku storms into the apartment and slams the door shut to his bedroom, trusting his dad would be the one to disarm the security system. Heihachi stands in the kitchen, preparing dinner when his husband comes in after. He raises his eyebrows and Aizawa sighs, training. Heihachi had to drag Izuku to the dinner table, as the boy had been sprawled on his bedroom floor knocked out. The entire time he just glares at Aizawa. Finally, when the table falls to silence after Heihachi's questions about school, Aizawa speaks, "Izuku, that sucked." The man narrows his eyes. "Yeah, it's supposed to suck." Izuku doesn't respond, poking angrily into his green beans with his fork. Fancy moves and tricks need endurance and stamina. You want to be a hero, that's what it's going to take. Heroes don't have to run miles during a fight. No, Aizawa agrees. But heroes take hits and blows during a fight. They get tired, but the successful heroes fight through that exhaustion. The longer they can go without feeling the intensity of the strain of battle, the more likely it is they'll have what it takes to come out on top. Heihachi watches the two, a little amused. He still didn't like the thought of Izuku becoming a hero, but his husband had been right. The best way to protect him was by being his teacher and giving him the best advice possible to win a fight. Izuku doesn't respond, though his fuming has simmered a tad. "Izuku, if you want to know why you're doing something, you ask. Whether you like it or not, we will be a part of your training. so you need to understand that we have your best interests in mind. Izuku still doesn't respond, shoving more food into his mouth at Hisashi's words. The man suppresses an eye roll. Do you understand? The boy fixes his eyes on the plate in front of him before muttering, Yeah, Papa, I get it. Aizawa didn't love running or working out in his neighborhood, instead preferring to go to UA and using their facilities after patrolling. However, it would be too much of a struggle trying to coordinate all their schedules, so every night at 6:30 p.m., him and his son would go on a run. Aizawa would set the pace. The one time he let Izuku try, they ended up sprinting for 15 minutes before Izuku dragged his feet the rest of the route. Up until the final 2 miles of the run, Izuku would do great. Aizawa gradually would pick up the pace towards the end, attempting to push his son harder. The boy now accepted these challenges, though he couldn't help but feel discouraged after not seeing much change. Other than stamina training, however, his dads didn't give too much advice unless asked for. Bakugo and Izuku alternated their training areas throughout the week, though their favorites were Fridays when they could meet up with UA second years. Amichiki began to open up a little more to the two kids, even Bakugo. Sometimes on those days Hisashi would attend to supervise so they could fight with their quirks, and Izuku held his own but still lost almost every fight. Still, the boy wasn't too discouraged. He knew he would need some type of support item to take on those with strength quirks. As for his own quirk, he did find himself growing impatient with the rodent. We've been doing the same thing for 3 weeks now, Izuku explains after he transfers a bruise from himself to Mirio with gloves on. Nezu just hums and instructs the boy to transfer it back to himself for the second time. Look, I know repetition is important, but I want to find out more about it. Like what? Izuku sits next to Mirio, who ruffles the boy's hair. I want to know if I have to have contact with the specific spot of the injury. I want to know if there's a way to pass it on through multiple people. And I want to know if there's a way to use it without hurting anybody. Like, if non-living things can take it away. He hums again. Mirio suggests inviting Amichiki to help out, but that earns a harsh glare from Izuku. Weren't you the one who told me if anyone hurt Tamaki you'd end them? Mirio blushes and scratches his neck. Yeah, well, Nezu finds his student's embarrassment endearing, but you always take it back, so he wouldn't really be getting hurt. Nezu convinces him to continue with today's exercises, and he would come up with something new the next week. True to his word, the next Wednesday Mirio, Izuku, and Nezu found themselves in the courtyard of the school. Sitting on a bench was a small goldfish, a box, and a small plant. The rodent instructs him to take a bruise from Mirio and transfer it to the fish. Izuku looks horrified. What if it kills him? Fish don't tend to bruise. I want to see if it would still work. Izuku refuses to try it with the fish, which prompts Mirio to say, Suo, you'll give it to your best friend but not a fish. Izuku glares at him. Well, you, a human, wouldn't die from a bruise. Nezu moves instead to the plant, but stops the boy when he places his hand on one of the leaves. I don't want you to contact the plant directly. Put your hand in the soil. Izuku places a hand on Mirio's arm and one in the plant. You explained that you could see the injury moving towards your body. I wanted to transfer directly to the plant. The bruise enters his fingertips and Izuku pauses, holding his breath. I don't know how to do that. Nezu stands on the ledge with the items and puts his paws on the boy's face. That's okay. Just try. He releases his breath and the bruise transfers from arm to arm, and he feels his head start to pound as he pushes it past the spot it's supposed to form. He forces it through his fingers, the migraine worsening as he tries to release it into the ground. When he can't take it anymore, he opens his eyes and takes his hand from the ground. He looks to his arm and sees a light bruise form. Despite his obvious disappointment, Nezu is grinning from ear to ear. You did it. What? He asks, rubbing his temples to get rid of the remaining headache. That bruise is far smaller than the one on Mirio's arm. You managed to release some of it into the ground. He looks back to his arm to see the bruise. He had expected it to darken and grow, but it remained the same color and size. He smiles up at the teacher. After a particularly difficult run for Izuku, his dad and him sit on the couch watching a movie. Izuku is laying down with his feet over Aizawa's lap, and when he believes his son is finally asleep, he shifts to try and go to the chair. Before he even manages to lift the boy's feet, he feels a sharp tug on his scarf and looks up to see Izuku glaring at him. I'm just resting my eyes. He mocks his dad's primary excuse. Aizawa rolls his eyes. You are entirely insufferable, kid. His kid rolls over and adjusts his body so his head is in his dad's lap. He hums. The man smiles to himself, placing his hand in the green hair. He attempts to watch the movie, but finds himself falling asleep while running his fingers through Izuku's hair. He only wakes up when he hears the door to the apartment open, but doesn't open his eyes when he hears his husband disarm the alarm. Hisashi grins at his two boys cuddling before coming to the living room and turning off the TV. Aizawa feels lips pressed to his forehead and smiles, looking up at his husband. Come on, my love. Let's get you two to bed. Thankful for his night off of patrol, Aizawa carries his son to their bedroom. He returns to the kitchen as his husband pours himself a cup of tea and the two sit on the counter and tell each other about their days. "I saw 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 tonight." The man raises an eyebrow, which even 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 can see in the dim light. "He wants us to meet with him tomorrow afternoon." "About what?" 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 glances to the bedroom. Izuku's parents, Mirio and Deku, arrive for lunch the next day. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 was invited as well, but the blonde explains that his mom wants him helping around the house. Mirio asks question after question, much more comfortable with his teachers now that he had been seeing them after school. All three boys learn that the two had been married for 6 years and together for 8. They dated for a while their 3rd year at UA but broke up for a couple of years when they went to different agencies. They started talking again when they began teaching together at their old high school. The two men instruct the boys to either stay in the apartment or the yard of the complex until they return. Then they would all go to the beach to train together. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 drives the two to the station, both of their nerves increasing during the short trip. An officer leads them into the detective's office, and the two sit in separate chairs in front of their friend's desk. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 throws some files in a drawer and pulls out 2 folders with information regarding their son's case. "I'm going to avoid the niceties because I assume you both want to get home and relax, so we'll get straight into it." He pulls out a paper and places it in front of him. A scarily thin green-haired woman's face takes up half the sheet. "About a month ago, Izuku Midoriya checked into a rehabilitation center in Tokyo. She was connected to a social worker upon her release, which sent a flag up in our system. We have contacted the social worker, but she wasn't able to tell us much more than she had been in rehab for some addictive substance. We asked about Izuku, and the social worker wasn't aware the woman had a son. A few days ago she told us she would discuss the matter with Izuku, and we just heard back this morning." 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 sighs, leaning back in his chair. Izuku did not give many specifics on her and her son's situation, but stated she would like to meet with him. "Izuku is not her son," 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 grumbles. Aizawa grabs his husband's hand, feeling bile rise in his throat. They watch as 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 refuses to meet their eyes. She will not even consider giving up custody without having a meeting. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 starts to argue before a quick squeeze from Aizawa. The detective continues. "The judge won't allow a meeting between the two until Izuku settles. She will be drug tested weekly, and until she gets a stable job she won't have any contact unless requested by Izuku. At the moment, she is in a halfway house still in Tokyo, and if she tries to contact your family, any request from her will be thrown out the window." He pulls out another 2 sheets that the social worker had sent him and gives one to the men. "Any meeting that happens would be supervised by Izuku's social worker in a controlled environment, but you two would not be allowed at these meetings." However, the detective can't remember ever seeing President Mike so angry. Izuku Midoriya has requested a meeting with his foster parents. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 explains that there are no rules and stipulations, only that Izuku's social worker may be present for the meetings between the men and women. They're completely silent and unresponsive, which the detective should have expected with this news. He takes another breath, preparing himself. "There is another matter I need to discuss with you regarding Izuku's father." Though Aizawa would never admit it, he couldn't help but hope the man's lifeless body had been found in a river. Alas, a few days ago, Endeavor managed to catch a low-level member of the League of Villains. When interrogated, the man gave up names, all of which his involvement we had previously been aware of. Except one. He glances away from the heroes, Izuku Midoriya. The room seems to still. Aizawa's voice is low and dangerous when he speaks. "You mean to tell me that my son's abuser has been linked to the League of Villains, and we're only being informed of this now?" 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 does his best to ward off the intimidation radiating from the men. "Technically, I don't even need to be telling you this. There has been no evidence of the man being in Japan for the past 3 years. This is the very first crumb of information we have received about him that we haven't even confirmed yet. What else do you know?" 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 gives them both copies of the biological parents of Izuku, though nothing new had been added. All information pertained to their birth certificates, their quirk registries, marriage record, and driver's licenses. The two heroes leave the office, furious. They had been taking care of this kid for almost 2 years, earning his trust and watching him thrive. This was their kid, not the bastards who had abused and abandoned him. The two men watched as Izuku cried at the news. They had debated keeping this from him to protect him a little longer, but with 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘 possibly looking for him, they needed him to be aware so he would keep himself safe. He refuses to meet with Izuku, but his parents reassure him that he wouldn't have to for quite a while. He still trains and runs with his parents, but he's not allowed to stay home alone anymore. Instead, Mirio would walk him home from school and stay with him until Aizawa came back. A couple of weeks pass, and slowly his fears begin to lessen. He likes hanging out with Mirio, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗘, and Deku. They would do workouts in the complex's yard almost every day when their homework was complete. On days when it was just him and Mirio, they always had a lot of fun. He liked how honest the other boy was with him. They would help each other with homework. Mirio was much better at science and Izuku excelled with English because of his papa. Mirio would explain how nervous he was about the upcoming licensing exam and how he was afraid of letting everyone down. The licensing exam was on a Wednesday, which meant that Present Mike had to attend and Aizawa had to be home to watch Izuku. The boy waits anxiously for a text, but he knows Mirio would probably wait until training on the beach tonight to tell him. Aizawa walks into his room and asks, "Have you finished your homework?" Izuku nods in response. "Wanna help me make some cookies for 𝗧𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗏 and Mirio?" "Did they pass?" Izuku shouts excitedly, jumping from his chair straight to his bed. Aizawa grins. "Your papa told me. I want to give them a surprise tonight, but if anyone asks, it was your idea." Izuku practically chases 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 out the door as soon as he gets home. "Simon, Simon, Simon. I want to go see Mirio and 𝗧𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗏." They scarf down a quick dinner and arrive at the same time as the other boys. Immediately, Izuku hugs both of his friends. "Congratulations. I told you that you could do it." They put him down and Kaken huffs. "Yeah. Good job, losers." Mirio tears up and wraps the boy in a hug. He turns to Aizawa and Yamada, bowing. "Thank you so much. This is only one step to getting closer to becoming a hero, and it's because of all the work we have done with you and your son. We will continue to work hard and do everything within our power to become the best heroes possible." 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 smiles, putting a hand on his student's back. There's a reason they asked the blonde boy to look after their son. They knew he'd make a fine hero. Enough of that, Tagata. Tonight, you get to celebrate and relax. Just a normal high schooler who has achieved something great. Mirio begins to cry, opting to hug Izuku instead of the two pros. Those just might be the kindest words he had ever heard come from Eraserhead's mouth. They spend the rest of the night playing the warm water, on probably the last nice nights of the season. They eat cookies and talk about the exam. And even 𝗧𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗏 seems to relax with this group. Before they all leave for the night, Izuku hugs the quiet boy. "I know it doesn't mean much coming from me," he admits in a whisper, digging his face into the boy's neck, "but I'm really proud of you." He hides his tears in the smaller boy's hair. "Thank you, Izuku." One night, after 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 and Izuku have screamed their goodbyes to each other and Aizawa gets his kiss, a knock sounds from the door. They both look up from the table suspiciously as Aizawa checks the camera. It's Izuku's social worker. He instructs the kid to go to his room, and when he leaves, the man opens the door. The woman shifts her weight nervously. "Mr. Aizawa, I am so sorry to disturb you so late, but we've been informed that your foster licensing has not been renewed. Until it is, I'm afraid Izuku cannot be in your custody." Aizawa blinks. "What?" The woman repeats herself, but the man shakes his head with disbelief. "No, that can't be right. Me and my husband turned in the forms a couple of days ago. I'm really sorry, Mr. Aizawa. But until those files are reviewed by my supervisor and a judge, Izuku needs to stay somewhere with proper licensing. He has been with us for 2 years now, and you just want to take him?" he whispers angrily. The social worker looks up at the man. "Please, Mr. Aizawa, do not make this harder than need be. It will only scare the boy more," she sighs, explaining, "Your paperwork should go through first thing on Monday morning, and then he will be able to come back. My supervisor returns Sunday night, and I will do everything in my power to make sure she reviews your files first." Aizawa begins to shake. Frustration, anger, fear, worry. He can't even pinpoint the emotions he feels. He steps to the side to open the door as the woman walks in. He follows her down the hall in silence, and she enters his son's room while he remains in the doorway. She asks Izuku to pack a bag for a few nights, and he looks at Aizawa fearfully. "Dad, what's going on?" He takes a step into the room, kneeling towards his son and grabbing his hands, doing his best to keep his emotions in check to comfort the kid. "I'm so sorry, Izuku, but there has been a mix-up in the court with our foster licenses. It should be fixed by Monday." He tries to keep his voice as steady as possible. "But this weekend you have to go somewhere else." "Dad," he feels tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "You will be entirely safe, I promise. It'll be just like spending the night at Bakugo's, okay? You'll have your phone and we can call." "I'm sorry, Mr. Aizawa," the social worker interrupts, "but the home doesn't allow cell phones." The man glares at her, unable to stop his eyes from glowing and his hair flying backwards before he calms down to speak to Izuku. "It'll just be for 2 nights, baby. You are so brave and so strong, and I know you'll be okay." "All right, Izuku." Izuku fights back his own tears and packs a bag with a couple changes of clothes in it, quickly stuffing his present mic and rare Eraserhead action figures in his bag. When the two are at the door, Aizawa gives him the tightest hug possible, wanting to just pick him up and run off. The social worker coughs, and he pulls away. He places a kiss on his son's head and ruffles his hair before promising to see him on Monday. The new foster parents meet him and the social worker at the door. Izuku has never stayed in a house before. He grips his bag tight and peeks inside at the 3 kids in the living room. When the social worker leaves, the parents send him up to his room he'll be sharing with 2 other boys for the weekend. One of them looks up, shock taking over his face. Izuku-chan, he whispers. He runs into the room, throwing his arms around 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 and breaks down. He felt as though if he cried in front of his dad, he'd just make the man even sadder, but now he couldn't hold back the tears. When he finally calms down, the UA student pulls away, though Izuku unconsciously keeps his hand on the other boy's sleeve. Is Izuku? What's going on? The other boy had left the room during Izuku's explanation. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 feels relieved when he hears it. So you're going home on Monday. Izuku nods. He hasn't felt this small in years. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 tries to smile. All right. So tomorrow we're going to hang out and have fun, okay. And then it's only one more day until you see your dads. True to his word, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 keeps the boy busy the entire day. Mirio had told him that the boy's abusive father might be looking for Izuku, so he tried to keep him close to the house. It's hard to keep him entertained. They play with action figures for a while, but quickly move towards games like races and catch. They play cards outside, but after they finish eating lunch it begins to rain. They play old board games in the house, and though 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 is self-conscious about his quirk, he shows Izuku it at his request. He hated seeing someone he cared about so afraid. Eventually, when all of the boy's ideas are exhausted, Izuku asks, "Tamaki, why are you here?" To his knowledge, the boy with vibrant purple hair lived with his mom. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 shifts, looking at the blanket as they sit on his bed. My mom got arrested again. She's in rehab, but once she gets out and put together, I'll get to see her. The stuttering never bothers Izuku. He still stuttered a lot when he was scared. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 always seems a little scared. How long have you been here? Just over a month. Izuku grabs the boy's hands, which brings their eyes together. Izuku trembles. I'm really sorry. I hope you get to go home soon. The next day, Izuku's told he's not to go to school as it was too far away to get him there. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 assured him that he'll skip for the day and stay with him until his parents arrive. They do the same things they did the day before, and Izuku manages to make the older boy laugh multiple times, which he thought to be near impossible. They go inside as the other kids begin to come home for the after-school snack. The foster mom leaves the kids snacking in the living room to take a call, and when she returns she informs Izuku that his dads would be picking him up in 10 minutes. Both 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 and Izuku go upstairs to get the boys' things together. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes before the doorbell rings and Izuku sprints down the stairs to tackle his dads into a hug. They are about to leave before 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 comes down the stairs, calling out to the boy. The two teachers do well at hiding their surprise at seeing their student. You almost forgot these. He hands the kid his Eraserhead and present mic action figures before running back to his room. They are about to leave before 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 comes down the stairs, calling out to the boy. The two teachers do well at hiding their surprise at seeing their student. You almost forgot these. He hands the kid his Eraserhead and present mic action figures before running back to his room. You could have come in first had you used your full power. Enji's voice booms throughout the entire house, causing Fayumi and Natsuo to flinch at the dinner table. Fayumi stands and hesitantly walks to the entryway as he continues to yell at her youngest brother, "You are too good to come in second. Do you understand me?" The boy has a scowl on his face as he tries to storm away from him. "I did not spend so much time training you for you to lose. Yeah, whatever, old man," he spits, marching up the stairs into his room, slamming his door shut. It looks as if the hero is about to follow him, so Fayumi steps out. "Hey, Dad," she says quietly, "I made dinner." His fire dies down a little bit as he turns to his daughter. He takes a deep breath and rubs his temples. "I'm about to head to my agency. Make sure your brother gets some," he responds, making his way down the hall into his room. Before he gets too far, she calls out, "It's your favorite." Enji sighs, turning back to pat his daughter on the head. "Go ahead and pack some up for me to go." Fayumi goes back into the kitchen where her other brother sits. He watches from the island as she grabs a container to put the man's food in. "Why do you always do that? You don't have to wait on him." She ignores Natsuo's words and packs his dinner. He tells her he won't be home for a few days, and she can't help but sigh when he tells her to take Natsuo shopping for his dorm room. Once she's cleaned up the kitchen and started the dishes, she grabs a plate and heads upstairs, knocking gently on Shoto's door. There's no answer, so she states, "It's just me, Sho." He huffs, which is signal enough for her to come in. He lays on his bed hugging a pillow. His computer is in front of him, which she shuts. He glares at her but grabs the plate from her hands and goes over to the small table to eat. "So I'm guessing you got in?" she asks quietly. "Yeah." She takes a deep breath and starts. "Shoto, I'm not going to use his quirk," he says with finality, predicting his sister's words. He stuffs his mouth with rice as she narrows her eyes. "Actually, Sho, I was going to say that I'm proud of you. Coming in second for recommendations isn't something to bat an eye at, especially using only half of your abilities." He glares at his older sister. "Dad doesn't think so." "Well, Dad can be a dick sometimes." He doesn't respond, only eats his food slowly with his sister's eyes watching him cautiously. Over a year ago he had developed an eating disorder, bulimia nervosa. It took months for anyone to notice, and it wasn't until Fayumi mentioned it to their dad that anything changed. For a month, Shoto had despised his older sister for breaking their trust and making him appear even weaker in front of their father. The boy would hide in his baggy clothes as his family would unknowingly watch him grow weaker and weaker until he finally broke down. He had fainted in front of Fayumi and cried to her about how he hated everything about himself. He just wanted to be like her and Natsuo, to not have this immense pressure of being perfect, and to not have his father's stupid quirk. She had listened and comforted him like a mother would. Fayumi really was the closest thing to a mother he's had. After his mom was sent to a hospital, Fayumi would take care of the boys on top of her own problems. Then she had gotten them a nanny. But both Natsuo and Shoto had made it their mission to make the woman's life a living hell. They were so angry at what he had done to their mother. The nanny broke after they had stuffed a frog in her pillowcase the 4th night in a row. Their father had sat down with Fayumi, who was in her first year of high school. He asked her if she could handle looking after her brothers so he could still work. All he would need from her is to make sure the boys got their homework done and got dinner, and he would be able to do the rest. She had wanted to please her father so bad, so she agreed, happy he entrusted this responsibility to her. And it had worked. At first, the first couple of months were great. He'd be home to get them all to bed at night and get them to school in the morning. However, work began to take priority again, and by her 3rd year she was doing all of it. She would make breakfast and pack lunches. She made sure her brothers got to school on time and would give them a ride home. She would make sure they attended quirk therapy, got their homework done, make dinner, and put them to bed. Her grades began to slip, but if her father noticed, he said nothing. So she became their parent, their shoulder to cry on and their person to come to with nightmares. She would help them with problems with their friends and host sleepovers. She made sure that they were loved and gave special attention to Shoto, who probably felt more pressure than she did. Now, she would wait on him to eat, and she didn't hide that fact either. She tried to make a point of not watching him directly, rather messing around on her phone or cleaning something while he ate. She would wait half an hour after he was done before finally leaving him alone. He pretends to hate this time spent with his sister, and he did at first. But now it was their time to talk, which he had never been very good at. She would tell him about her day, though those conversations became shorter over time as things got repetitive. Today she told her brother about a kid crying at the supermarket over not getting Brussels sprouts. I mean, candy and snacks I can understand, but Brussels sprouts? What kind of kid actually cries over vegetables? She laughs. Fayumi, he asks in between bites. She never made him have table manners. Are you going to go to university like Natsuo? She brushes her white hair behind her back. Probably not. Why? I think you should, he says quietly, gripping his chopsticks tighter. You're way too smart to stay here. She smiles sadly at him. Of course she wanted to continue her studies. Of course she wanted to get out of this sad, lonely house that has never seemed full since her mother was sent away. But she couldn't. Maybe when you get a little older I'll go. But right now someone needs to make sure you and Dad are taken care of. That's not your job, he states, food spilling from his mouth. He knows that's why she stays. And he fucking hates it. You were around my age when you started taking care of us. I can take care of myself. And that was the truth. She had taught him to cook and clean. She taught him how to do his own laundry and use public transportation. He was a good student. He couldn't think of any reason she should stay other than his shitty mental health. She doesn't respond, which is very unlike her. Usually she has to pester her brother into answering questions and working on continuing the conversation herself, so this was new. She watches him push his bowl away and joins her on his bed. She runs her fingers through his messy hair, pulling at the knots. I've always wanted to be a teacher. Do you think I'd be any good at it? You'd be the best. I don't understand why I have to come. Fayumi sighs, holding her brother's shoes out to him. Dad wants you to get some clothes for the banquet tonight. I have dress clothes. Predicting her brother's words, she cuts him off. Specifically dress shoes so you don't use your feet hurting to bail out early. Shoto sighs, taking the shoes from her and sitting on the steps to put them on. Plus, he wants you to get some things for school. I wear a uniform for school, he grumbles. Natsuo slings an arm around his shoulder. Come on, Sho. You get to help me get some things for my dorm room. Without a word he stands, pushing his brother off of him and walks to the door. The three take a bus to the mall. Though two are capable of driving and have vehicles, they always get a bit antsy behind the wheel. They start in a home store where Natsuo purchases a new mattress, bedding, and pillows. The little brother wanders off towards the office supplies section before the two Todoroki siblings get into a heated debate about coffee tables. He picks out a few notebooks and a fancy leather planner. He makes his way over to the pens, debating on a pack of 20 or 25, but he's knocked to the ground by a boy with green hair. Both eyes widen as the stranger scrambles off of him. I'm so sorry. He giggles, looking behind him as if he's waiting for someone. The crash was loud, and he helps the boy pick up his things, shoving them into Shoto's arms as a blonde woman appears around the corner behind presumably her son who the boy seemed to be running from. "Boys, knock it off," she shouts loudly. She gets red when she notices everyone looking at her. The woman looks at Todoroki and apologizes, dragging both boys out of the store by the ear. He watches as the green-haired boy is pulled away. He was cute, he can't help but think to himself. Soon his brother and sister find him, so he quickly decides to purchase the 25-pack of colorful pens, as well as the pastel set of 10. They help him grab some mechanical pencils and go to the front of the store to set up delivery options for the mattress, pillows, a coffee table, and a set of dishes Natsuo absolutely had to have. Shoto was quiet the rest of the trip. He didn't even complain as his sister dressed him up and left the store with far more than he needed. But hey, it was his dad's money and they had plenty of it. It took about 2 days for the youngest Todoroki to stop thinking about the freckled kid he had met in the store. Well, maybe not met, quite literally ran into. At the end of the week was a banquet, where he would soon learn that the boy wouldn't be leaving his mind anytime soon. The first time they see Endeavor all week is when he returns home to pick them up for the banquet. They're all waiting quietly in the entryway, conversing among themselves when they hear their father approach. Without meaning to, the three fix their postures as he enters. He's almost shocked to see them. You guys look very nice." They walk out to the car. Fayumi plays the music and talks with her father while the boys in the backseat fight over who has to sit on the end during dinner. They've been to plenty of these things, and knew even without seeing the seating chart that Fayumi would end up on one side of Dad, and one of them would sit on the other with the last kid having to sit next to a stranger. Eventually, when the fight results in ice covering the window by Shoto's head, Endeavor looks back in the mirror. Enough. He reaches back to melt the ice on the interior of his car. "Shoto, you sat by me last time. It's Natsuo's turn." Natsuo grins triumphantly as Shoto continues to pout. They arrive only 5 minutes late, but it seems that almost everyone else has arrived. Denji practically begs his kids to be on their best behavior. For the first 15 minutes, all three follow him around, letting him introduce them to his colleagues before Natsuo and Fayumi leave to talk to others. Shoto waits behind his dad. He tended to have a hard time making friends at these things. "Yamada, Aizawa, how are you?" It always felt so weird hearing his dad talking all businesslike, even though he's heard it multiple times in his life. A loud voice responds, "We're well. Have you had a chance to meet our son?" Shoto's ears perk up at this but loses hope almost immediately after. Most heroes had really young kids, or kids that were already grown up. There was never anyone his own age at these things. "I'm afraid I haven't." "Shoto," he calls for his son. He goes to his side as the dark-haired man says, "We only adopted him recently." His eyes widen when he sees the green-haired boy in awe of his dad in front of him. "Holy shit, you're Endeavor, the number 2 hero." The blonde man facepalms while the other smiles. "I have an action figure of you, and a poster, and your DVD." He stops when he sees the other boy in front of him. "I'm so sorry about his language, it's quite alright." Enji chuckles. The blonde nudges him, causing them to break eye contact. "Go ahead, introduce yourself." He smiles. Holy shit, his smile was pretty. He looks between Shoto and Enji. "My name's Izuku Midoriya. I'm attending UA in the fall, so I'll go by Midoriya there because both my dads are teachers." Enji places a hand on his son's head, glad that there's finally a kid his son's age. He hated these things himself, so he couldn't imagine how boring it must be for his own kids. Hopefully, the young Todoroki will make a new friend. "This is my son Shoto. He'll also be attending UA. Maybe you'll be in the same class." He eyes Aizawa, who nods. The dark-haired man steps between Shoto and Izuku, reaching his hand out. Instinctively, the boy goes to shake it. "I'm Shota Aizawa, hero name Eraserhead. I will be yours and Izuku's homeroom teacher during the years you spend at UA." He hears the same giggle he heard at the mall. "You sound really weird being all formal." Aizawa ruffles the other boy's hair. "Oh, shut it, kid." Shoto finally finds his words. It's nice to meet you, sir. And you, Izuku." The family of 3 walk away, leaving Shoto staring after the boy once again, though this time, Izuku looks back. Enji smirks at the longing eye contact, suppressing a laugh. Oh, his son is so lovesick over that boy. Dinner comes quickly, and Shoto finds himself dreading whoever's going to end up next to him. Natsuo nudges him, looking as smug as he always did when Dad took his side in an argument. Izuku walks in the big doors with his parents trailing behind him. He's looking at the seating chart, and once he realizes who he's by, he makes direct eye contact with Todoroki and grins. It looks as if he's about to start running, but before he can, Mr. Aizawa grabs the back of his shirt and whispers something to him. The grin is still on his face as he walks over and takes the seat next to Shoto, who gives him a small smile back. "My name's Izuku." A blush spreads underneath the boy's freckles and he grimaces. Yeah, you knew that? My bad." "You're all right," he says quietly, the small smile still on his lips. Natsuo immediately turns towards his brother. The boy never talked more than he had to at these things, so making polite conversation was entirely out of the ordinary. "This is my brother, Natsuo." Izuku bows his head as a greeting and asks where the boy went to junior high. Natsuo watches with amazement at the interaction until his little brother kicks him in the shin hard. He turns towards Fayumi, who's talking with her father and another hero on her side. They make eye contact and Natsuo motions with his head towards their brother. Fayumi leans back in her chair and grins at Natsuo. They were so cute. All conversation falls short when dinner is brought in and acknowledgements are announced. After a brief applause, Izuku nudges Todoroki with his foot and leans over to mutter, "This is my first time at one of these things. How do you, or what do we do with all of this?" He motions towards the array of silverware and chopsticks. "Just do as I do," he says, repeating the words his sister had told him all those years ago. After dinner, Enji parades his son a little while longer before the boy is finally allowed to wander off. He goes outside where the other kids tend to gather and see his older brother with a group of his friends, but no Izuku. He's about to head inside to continue his search, but is instead almost ran into by the green-haired boy. Again he is met with the boy's grin. "Were you at the mall the other day?" he asks. "Yes, you ran into me." Izuku laughs lightly. "Yeah, sorry about that. My friend was chasing me." Shoto nods. He had assumed as much. Izuku asks if he'd like to walk around, so they begin walking on the patio of the banquet before finding a bench to sit on. "So, what's your dad like?" Disappointment fills him and his face falls. It's alright." Of course, he only wanted to be friends because of Endeavor. Izuku can sense his change in demeanor and quickly begins to correct himself. "No, not like that. My dads are heroes too, and I know they're gone a lot. I was just wondering how your family handles it and I just want to talk to you." Oh, his guard was still up. But those eyes, they look so sincere. "Yeah, my dad's gone a lot too. My sister looks after me most of the time. I wish I had an older sibling." The boy moves his eyes to the sky. Shoto joins him, and they watch the stars. "One of my dad's students looks after me when they're both not home. He's really cool. He's a third year now. I actually began training with him and his friend, and that's actually how we met. Not through Papa, but my parents were actually pretty upset." The boy rambles, but when he feels eyes on him he stops and blushes. "Oh, I'm sorry." Shoto tilts his head. He didn't even remember when he decided to look at him. "Why? I ramble a lot sometimes. It can get annoying, so I'm sorry. But I'm not annoyed." It's silent. Izuku doesn't quite know how to respond. Shoto mentally facepalms. He always seemed to do this. He has a special talent of stopping conversations. "Oh, okay." Shoto bites his lip and looks at the ground and remembers a question he never had the chance to ask at dinner. "If you don't mind me asking, how did your dads meet you?" The other boy pauses and Shoto panics. I've seen your dad around before, the blonde one, at these sorts of things, but I've never seen your Mr. Aizawa before, and you said it was recent, so." He almost wishes he kept his mouth shut. He has never had a problem with stuttering or rambling before. He was always so sure of what he was going to say. Before he can stress too much about it, Izuku smiles. "Again, my dad, Aizawa, he found me one night while he was patrolling. He got me out of a situation. And him and my papa fostered me for a couple of years. Dad never goes to these things, but Papa convinced him this time." "Right." Shoto tries to smile back at him. "What's your dad like?" "Well, as a dad he's great. He's super overprotective but really funny and nice." He faces out, waving his hand dismissively. "But as a teacher he's a bit of an asshole, I'm not gonna lie. He began training me last summer and made me run so much. Basically until I threw up, but I never did. And he'd make me do more training after running when I felt dead." He continues, and Shoto listens as he talks about the workouts his dad made him do and what he did for helping with homework. Apparently, Mr. Aizawa did not excel in English or literature, but he was a genius when it came to math. He's super tough but super fair. And he's only tough because he wants me to be safe, so I think that's why he's tough with his students too. Izuku finishes, taking a deep breath. Shoto didn't know it was possible for a person to talk that much with a single breath of air. Before the boy can apologize again, he's stopped by the smile on his new friend's face. "You know, Izuku, I think I'm getting excited for high school. Why didn't you wake me up?" Izuku screams, running from his room to the bathroom and slamming the door. Yamada jolts up at the noise before looking at the clock, expecting to have overslept, but no, it was 6:30 in the morning. He flops back into bed, hearing the shower water running. He tries to fall back asleep for 20 minutes but fails, so he gets up and begins to make breakfast. Izuku rushes through his shower, bouncing with excitement. Instead of the normal 45 minutes, it takes only half an hour for him to jump out and do his skincare routine. He leaves the bathroom and yells at his papa, "Are you up?" "Yes, Izuku," he hears the man say from the kitchen. He throws his uniform on and checks that all of his school supplies are organized in his backpack. The boy had barely slept, he had been so excited. So he had been in a deep sleep when his second alarm sounded 15 minutes late. Turns out he had set his first one for 6 at night. He is absolutely flabbergasted to see his papa still in his pajamas at 7:30, sitting at the kitchen table just casually drinking coffee and reading his newspaper. The cinnamon rolls are cooling on the stove, the smell of the sugary frosting melting wafting through the apartment. "We're gonna be late, Papa," he exclaims, already in his shoes with his backpack on. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 sighs at his son's overdramaticness, but finds the excitement endearing. "We'll be just fine, baby. Now sit down and eat your breakfast." He begins to shovel the food into his mouth before the man snaps. "I'm sorry, I thought I told you to eat your food, not inhale it." The man goes into the bathroom to get ready when he hears the doorbell. It's Kakin. He informs his papa before buzzing him in. He listens to the two talk quietly in the kitchen as he does his hair and gets dressed. He's almost ready when his son whines, "Papa, we're gonna be late." He rolls his eyes and goes into the living room, smiling brightly at the two boys. "It's only 7:45, we have plenty of time. Now come on, I need some first day of school pictures from you." Bakugo groans, but Izuku smiles brightly, seeming to already practice for the pictures. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗛𝗡 quickly grabs a container and puts 2 cinnamon rolls in it for his husband. He turns towards his son. "Are you ready?" he shouts. Izuku grins and screams back, "OHHHYEAHHH." He bounces as his papa activates his quirk, forcing his friend to press his hands against his ears as tight as possible. OHHHYEAHHH. Bakugo can hear them both clear as day as they come together to scream, OHHHYEAHHBABBYYYYYYY. The boy glares at his friend, narrowing his eyes. "You two are gonna make my ears bleed one of these days." Both Izuku and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 giggle as he makes his way to the door. He turns back at them, giving a look to kill. "What?" Izuku grins, running up to his friend and looping their arms together. Dad says the same thing. They finally leave and Izuku grins brightly at the camera. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 forces Bakugo to get a picture, and eventually the boys get in the car and make it to UA. Somehow, his son becomes even more excited and he can almost see stars shining in his eyes. Bakugo mutters, "You've been coming here every single week for like a year and a half, Deku. Calm your tits." Izuku is quick to respond, "Yeah, but now we're actually students. This is going to be our school for the next 3 years. There's going to be pro heroes teaching us and we're going to see our classmates succeed. And we're going to become friends." Both 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 and Bakugo listen as Izuku talks all the way into the school, into the teacher's lounge, and eventually to their classroom. He seems as if he's going to continue talking for another half an hour until class starts, so 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 finally cuts him off. "Okay, baby." Bakugo tries to walk into the classroom, but 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 pulls the other boy back by his collar. "First day, try to make some friends and behave. If you need absolutely anything, this goes for both of you." He wraps them both into his long arms. "You just send me a text, all right?" Now, he lets them go, watching as Bakugo pretends to be annoyed from the hug. "Take it easy on Dad, all right? Don't be a headache for any of your teachers because we will hear about it." He raises an eyebrow at the blonde boy. "Especially you, Katsuki." He rolls his eyes. Yeah, old man. I'll see you later." He walks inside the classroom, leaving the two alone. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 looks to be on the verge of tears, so Izuku hugs his waist tightly. "I'll be okay, Papa. I love you." Present Mike sniffles. "I'm so proud of you, Izuku. I love you so much." Izuku runs to join his best friend and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 fights back tears and makes his way to his husband's office to show him the adorable pictures of their baby all grown up. "Okay, get out of here. Real training begins tomorrow." The entire class stands and watches as their teacher walks away. Mind is crying with relief from not being expelled. No one's really sure what to do next. He had told them to go home early on their first day of school, shocking them all. Let's go get changed," Izuku suggests once his dad's out of sight. On their way to the locker rooms, the mood lightens a little bit. Mostly everyone chats quietly with someone in the class. Izuku had originally wanted to speak with Todoroki, but was quickly intercepted by Ida and Uraraka. Everyone calls their parents or begins to walk home once they're changed. Before the brunette girl leaves to begin her walk, she exchanges phone numbers with her 2 new friends. Izuku is beaming about this. He only had 7 contacts saved in his phone: his dad's, Nimuri, Bakugo, Mrs. Bakugo, Mirio, and Amajiki. And now he almost had 10. Izuku waits for his dad or papa to text him back, not really sure what he's supposed to do or where to go. Soon it's just him, Bakugo, Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momo. Everyone talks quietly and Izuku breaks away from Bakugo and Kirishima's argument to interrupt the other conversation. Shoto smiles at the boy, which make his old friend jump. Momo knew the youngest Todoroki for years, and never has he offered a smile for a greeting. "So, is Endeavor picking you up?" the boy asks nervously. "No, my older sister is. She was shopping on the other side of town, so she said it was going to be a while." Again, the girl's eyes widen. Was he blushing? Oh, I get it. Do you? The freckled boy's face turns beet red. Do you maybe want to exchange phone numbers? Shoto starts smoking, literally smoking, and she knows he's only seconds from bursting into flames, so she speaks, sure. Here, give me your number and I'll text you Todoroki's so you'll get both his and mine. Izuku looks from Momo to Shoto and back again before smiling sheepishly. That would be great. You know, just in case we have questions about homework or something, we should all have each other's numbers. Before the girl has a chance to text him Shoto's number, the blonde storms over to them. Deku, let's go. Todoroki finally puts the pieces together. He knew the blonde looked familiar. He was the one chasing Izuku in that store. My dads haven't responded yet. Well, we'll go to your house then. Let's go. Izuku says goodbye and they start their walk home. Momo nudges her friend, raising an eyebrow. You want to tell me what that's all about? If he could blush more than he was, he would. I met him at a banquet. Momo grins. He's cute. Izuku and Todoroki have been texting every day for a week, but only because of the help of Shoto's sister. Hey, Fayumi, he had asked one night after dinner, how do I text someone I might like? The girl had squealed, but was disappointed when her little brother wouldn't give her any details other than the person was in his class. She explained that it's easier to start with questions about homework and school, whether or not they were genuine. The two played iMessage games. Izuku excelled at 8-ball and archery, but Shoto consistently kicked his ass in everything else, especially Connect 4. The two chatted quietly in the locker room as they got changed into their costumes before heading to the USJ for the first time. Izuku, Shoto asks quietly as they make their way to the bus with the other boys. What are you doing Friday? The boy blushes. I've got a doctor's appointment until 5, but I should be free after that. Why? Technically, his therapist was his doctor. Shoto bites his lip, looking at the ground in front of him. My dad's making me go to a fundraiser with him, and he said I could bring a friend. Would you like to come with me? Yes, Izuku blurts out, drawing the attention of the rest of his classmates before quieting and looking at Shoto. Yes, I would love to. The other boy smiles but shies away at the bright eyes he stares into. All right, I'm sure you have to ask your dad so you can text me what they decide. They continue to talk all the way to the bus and to the USJ. Izuku asks why he didn't invite Momo, and Shoto lies claiming he did but she couldn't attend for some reason. Izuku's face falls a little at that, but he quickly comes to the conclusion that being asked second is good enough for now. His dad's asleep in the front seat, but wakes up as the bus pulls to a stop. No one moves as he stands and makes his way off the bus. He's on the last step when he raises an eyebrow and says incredulously, "Let's go." Without hesitation, Kirishima, Izuku, Kaminari, Mainta, Ajiro, Uraraka, Tsu, and Hagakure jump up and scream together, LeySmitt. The sound is so loud it blows Aizawa's hair back and he glares at his students with red eyes, causing them all to shrink. See me after class. He leaves the bus. You too, Hagakure. If she wasn't invisible she would have blushed. Hero 13 meets the class inside, and her and Aizawa explain they will be doing rescue exercises throughout the USJ. They're about to assign the terrains to the first group of students when a loud crash sounds from the middle of the training center. A portal opens, and villains start running through. Aizawa rushes towards the middle, instructing 13 to take care of his students and get help. Izuku can't take his eyes off his dad. He's taken back to the night Aizawa found him, his eyes red with his capture scarf flying around him. He had never seen him in actual battle, and this appeared to be much more intense and dangerous than the fight with the petty criminal in the alleyway. Izuku, Todoroki shouts, getting both his and Aizawa's attention. The boy's running back towards him and he turns around to come face to face with the portal villain. He swallows both him and Shoto, and they both tumble into the industrial zone of the center. They're in the middle of a large group of villains, all hesitantly approaching them, not quite sure of their quirks. Izuku, Shoto mutters with their backs against each other, "Get to high ground. I don't want to hurt you." Izuku looks around, trying to find the best opening. There's a bit of distance between two villains. With a broken window he should be able to get through. Cover yourself. I'll let you know when I'm safe. Izuku sprints towards the two villains, keeping himself low as one of them tries to throw a car tire at him. He dodges and catches him off guard by sliding on the ground and swiping at his feet. He should continue fighting, but the window is so close and if all else fails the villain will follow him inside, so that's one less person for Todoroki to take care of. He jumps through the window, slicing his side on the remnants of glass in the frame. He rolls into a landing, expecting the other man to jump through. He quickly uses the beams in the room to get to the ceiling, and when the bulky villain comes through he jumps down, smashing the man's head into the ground with his foot. He runs as fast as he can up the stairs, grateful for the year's worth of his dad's endurance training. He gets to the 7th floor and opens a window to yell at his friend who's barely able to hold everyone off, Shoto. The boy glances at his friend, giving him a thumbs up from the upper floors of the building. He takes a deep breath and shoots ice into the ground, freezing all the men in its path. He starts walking to the building, but his friends disappeared. He doesn't notice the man following behind him until Izuku bursts from one of the windows, using his body and the momentum from the fall to barrel towards the man, knocking him out cold. Shoto freezes him in place when Izuku gets up, and they go to check on each other. Blood is seeping through the green-haired boy's uniform while Shoto is completely covered in ice. "Are you all right?" They ask at the same time. They both blush, and Shoto starts shaking from the cold. "Here," Izuku says, kneeling to the ground. The other looks around cautiously but joins him on the ice. Izuku places the boy's hand on his head, making the boy turn even redder. Slowly, the ice begins to melt. He notices Izuku's grimace and immediately pulls his hand away. "What are you doing?" The boy's nose bleeds and he wipes it with his sleeve. You were getting frostbite from your eyes. I took it and gave it away." "Your quirk." His eyes narrow in concern. "Did it hurt you?" "It's okay," he promises, standing up. "It's all gone now." He places Shoto's hand on his own stomach so he can feel the lack of injury. The two walk towards the exit of the industrial area and see their other classmates fighting. Izuku hears his dad call out and he begins to run towards him, but Shoto stops him. "Simon, we have to help him," he pleads with the boy. "I know. We need to come up with a plan first." They plan as they creep towards the fight in the middle. They can see their teacher struggling. But over 30 villains have been defeated as 20 more attack. "I can't believe he doesn't have a rank," Shoto mutters. Izuku runs towards him from the back while Shoto freezes everyone in the front. The Namu breaks through easily, and Shigaraki is too close to his teacher to safely try and freeze him to the ground. Shigaraki knocks the barely standing Aizawa to the ground and looks to the student, causing all the damage to his backup. They're stronger than the ones in the industrial area, so they break away quicker, leaving Shoto to fight them by himself. "Get out of here," Aizawa roars, unaware of his son's presence. Izuku hide behind the rock, waiting for Shigaraki to try to take on Shoto. Bakugo and Kirishima show up to help, leaving Todoroki to continually keep freezing the Namu while they take care of the rest. His heart pounds. He doesn't have much time. He just needs a full minute to get his dad to be able to function. He just needs a second of an opening. The Namu roars as Todoroki knocks him to the ground, ice beginning to grow over half of body again. The crusty hand man turns to his creation and growls, storming away from the semi-conscious man, and Izuku takes his hand. He runs to his dad, clamping a hand of his mouth to keep him from yelling at him and his friends. His dad's head goes back, but Izuku grips him tightly, feeling the pain begin to fill him. He doesn't have time to transfer it all in the open like this. He has to hold it until he gets away. He doesn't even flinch as his dad bites him and Izuku's ears begin to bleed. His dad's eyes open wider as Izuku's begin to burn. He feels like he's going to vomit when a hand grabs him and throws him to the side. "It's All Might, young Midoriya. Get Mr. Aizawa to the front. Reinforcements are coming." Izuku watches in awe as All Might jumps in, taking on the Namu himself. Using the rest of his adrenaline, he runs towards his friends, the only villain left standing being Shigaraki. He yells to Kirishima and Kaken, "Get Aizawa out of here, I'll get Shoto." He shouts. Katsuki hesitates, but does as his friend says. He wasn't going to let his best friend's dad die in the crossfire of All Might's mess. Shoto lays on the ground shaking. Izuku throws up upon putting his hand on the other's arm. His father's head wound opens on his own forehead, causing his vision to blur. He doesn't even recognize he's falling until his head hits the ground over Shoto's body. He feels steam coming from under him and sees the boy with half red and half white hair holding his face, begging him to stay awake. He leans to the side and throws up again, able to feel whatever damage his dad had endured in his stomach. "Izuku!" Todoroki shouts. He looks past him, watching as the man with a million hands walks through the portal, followed by another familiar face before he passes out. Shoto watches as his friend bleeds, trying his best to keep pressure on the wounds until paramedics arrive. "Come on," he begs. "Wake up so you can heal yourself, Simon." Paramedics and Hisashi rush down the stairs, looking for any injuries. They hadn't done a count yet, but there were only 2 missing at the moment. It's not difficult to find them laying in the grass by the beach of the sea area. Izuku coughs, waking up, and Shoto pins his hands into the ground. "Get rid of the injuries, now, Izuku. Please." So he does, or he tries. He tries to get his headache to go away, feeling as he almost swallows it into his neck and through his arms. It pulses into the earth, and his head wound closes as the paramedics approach. Shoto begs them to leave him there so he can heal himself, but no one listens. Hisashi hardly even hears the boy's voice as he holds his son's face as they push him away on the stretcher. They make it back to the top. Izuku out cold again when he hears his husband cry out. He hurries over to him, watching as Aizawa tries to sit up and get out of the ambulance. "Shoto, where is he? Where's Izuku? Are my students safe?" he asks rapid fire. The paramedics look as if they're about to sedate him, but Hisashi holds up a hand. "My love, please calm down. Bakugo, Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momoi all have minor injuries. Izuku's being put into an ambulance now. Go to him." he yells. The blonde tries to speak, but before he can, his husband shouts, "Now, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘." Todoroki tries to find the hero. He needs to explain Izuku couldn't go to a hospital, he would have nowhere to put the injuries in. He tries to explain this to the paramedics, but they only look at him like he's crazy. It's his quirk. The ambulances leave, bringing Mr. Aizawa in one, an unconscious Izuku in another, and in a third Bakugo, Kirishima, and Todoroki sit getting their vitals taken. When they get to the hospital, Aizawa is immediately brought into surgery, but his state leaves the doctors perplexed. He had blood on his head, quite a lot of it, and a ton of blood in his ears, but there appears to have never been an injury. He's broken both arms, so the work to reset them and repair the damage in his internal organs. But again, it's not as bad as it seems. He sprained his ankle, so he'd be in a boot and casts for his arms for quite a while. The blood in his ears was cause enough for the man to be stuck in a neck brace for at least a week. Izuku had managed to get rid of the worst of his injuries, though had weirdly similar injuries to his father. He had 2 broken ribs and a severely bruised liver as well. There were other minor abrasions and injuries, but other than that he was leaving practically scot-free. The doctors suggest putting Aizawa and his son in the same room, and 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 agrees. Izuku is still in surgery when his husband wakes up. His eyes flutter open, slowly taking in his surrounding. He tries to sit up when he remembers what happened, but 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 quickly pushes him back into bed. "Okay, Shota, okay. Let me fill you in." The man listens quietly, soreness beginning to fill his body as his husband explains the League of Villains attack. Based on what he had heard from the 3 goons, they had helped Izuku draw attention away from his dad so he could have time to recover. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 finishes by explaining All Might had ended the fight, causing the remaining villains to retreat. The neck brace itches around his neck as the man closes his eyes. "Izuku, he got hurt because of me." "No, my love, please don't blame yourself, you weren't there, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘." He snaps angrily, only able to look at him with his eyes. "He used his quirk on me, the little bastard." 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘's eyes soften, and he touches his husband's cheeks. "So all of his injuries, they were yours." He leans into the soft touch, and tears spill from his eyes. "I heard him, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘, I couldn't protect him," he whispers. It's quiet for a second, and before 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 has a chance to comfort him, a boy bursts into the room. The young Todoroki looks simply exhausted. Before either can yell at him to leave, he states breathlessly, "Please, it's about Izuku's quirk. I don't think the paramedics knew, so he couldn't finish. What about my son's quirk?" Nezu steps into the room, having walked calmly after the boy. "Please, Shoto, go back to your room and wait for your family. I will let them know." The boy looks between the men and the rodent, but ultimately gives in, knowing his father would be pissed if his prized son managed to get expelled. "What about our son's quirk, Nezu?" He goes and sits on the chair at the foot of Aizawa's bed. "How are you doing, Mr. Aizawa?" "The surgery went well." Aizawa growls, "What's going on with my son, Rat?" The white rodent looks at Yamada. "Please explain the state of one of my best teachers, and then I will answer your question." Yamada explains how long he'll be in the equipment. First time Aizawa's hearing this as well, so he groans at the idea of wearing the brace for a week. Once Nezu is sure the man will have a full recovery, he begins to explain. "Izuku and I have been training his quirk in different ways since last summer. I attempted to convince him he didn't need to use his quirk to get into hero work, but he kept coming up with ideas and questions. We have found out he can transfer an injury from one person to another, through him first. He is able to release the injury through earth and water, though we haven't quite been able to get it to work without direct contact with the elements. We have not attempted to use his quirk through fire." "Get to the point, Nezu," Aizawa grumbles, beginning to feel the effects of the pain medication. He is able to store any injury into the elements, which from Todoroki's retelling of events he was planning to do with you. Their plan was to distract the villains so Izuku could get to you and take enough of your injuries so you could continue fighting. The problem with their plan was that you had a multitude of injuries, ranging in severity. When overwhelmed with all that pain at once, I'm afraid Izuku did not have enough focus to store it into the ground and fainted before he could do so. 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗟𝗘 erupts with anger. "You mean to tell me he has been doing this for a year? And you're just now informing us about this development?" He felt as if he could strangle the creature in front of them. Nezu nods. "Yes, Izuku had his reasons for keeping it from you, but I apologize sincerely. I should have informed you as to what our training consisted of." "Yeah, you sound so sincere," Aizawa mutters, fighting to keep his eyelids open. The door opens and they wheel the boy in. Nezu jumps from his chair. "I'm sure you have many more questions, but I will answer them at a later date so you can attend to your son." The principal leaves the doctors to explain the extent of Izuku's injuries and what his recovery may look like. He returns to the room where his 3 students wait anxiously for their families to pick them up. Are we in trouble?" the normally so confident Kirishima asks. Their principal sits in front of them, though they all keep their eyes low to the ground. "It is my job to lecture you students for how you so carelessly jumped into action, but..." He looks to the hall. "I assume you will be receiving one of sorts from your homeroom teacher soon enough." He clasps his paws in front of him. You boys were very brave today, and you fought well. You saw your teacher in trouble, and did your best to help him with minimal injuries to yourself. In that aspect, I applaud you. Both Shoto and Kirishima glance at each other, but Bakugo knows what's coming. He's received many lectures from both his parents as well as Izuku's over the years. But you must understand it was not your place or job to defend your teacher. You do not have licenses to fight with your quirks, and had you not been on school grounds you would absolutely have faced some sort of consequences. There it was. The principal drones on and on and on and on and on, until finally Bakugo's dad and Kirishima's mom burst into the room. They hugged their children and discussed the injuries and the plans for the coming week with the principal before leaving the hospital with their children. Fayumi comes in only seconds after his classmates leave, wrapping the boy in a hug. They leave the hospital and Shoto can't help but ask, "Where's Dad?" The girl's heart hurts for her brother. Of course he wants his dad. He had been scared for good reason, and he wanted the man to tell him he had done the right things and fought hard. Deep down, they both know the first question about the fight would be about whether or not Shoto had used his fire. I called his agency, but he's out on patrol. He won't know for a few more hours yet. He slams the passenger door shut.